All right, welcome to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 9 a.m. Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is citizen input for items not on the agenda. We do have a few requests to speak here today. So Mr. Ron Bozell.
Good morning, Commission.
Morning.
I am Rondo. I've lived in Bend for over 3 decades. And before I get to the point that I wrote on that little piece of paper I handed up, I'd like to share with you my imagination of what the conversation was like when you guys talked about and debated your $14,000 raise. I imagine that somebody must have said this county probably doesn't have the population to support that kind of raise. Where $42,000 we're going to be giving you guys every year, excuse me, you commissioners, our commissioners, $42,000 a year if my math is correct. And we're not going to get anything extra for that. And in a recent conversation, in many conversations, it's been pointed out that this commission has not done its job creating this beautiful community of ours in addressing homeless and houseless issues. And so now the conversation these last few years have been raising the demand for that action. And I'd like to see that. And I believe that we need help with our 3-member county commission. We need 5 members to increase diversity and increase that better conversation. And quite frankly, as we've discussed in the past, you commissioners can have more free conversations between each other one-on-one with a 5-member commission than the way that you do now, I believe. So I'm asking you to consider what $200,000 plus benefits a year that we'll be paying extra for 2 more commissioners. We'll get a lot more for that 200,000. And I would like you to consider that. And I am working right now with the county clerk to file petition to start gathering those signatures. And you guys can save me 2 years of work. If you just make this happen yourself, I think each one of you know that we deserve this, which is basically, I think, the argument that you gave yourselves when you gave yourselves the raise. Thank you very much.
You.
I'd just like to respond to Rondo that the $14,000 raise that was proposed and approved for this year, I will not be accepting that. I am taking a basic 4% cost of living adjustment, and that is it in terms of a pay increase for this year.
And Rhonda, I want you and the people in this room to be aware that when I ran for county commissioner, I said I would not sign up for PERS. I did not sign up for PERS. This year alone, it's saving the taxpayers over $27,000. I believe it's almost $100,000 since I started serving. I work really hard at my job. I worked for months on our courthouse funding. I made an emergency trip over to Salem 2 weeks ago on Monday morning to meet with the chair of Ways and Means. And because I was told we were not going to get any funding. I was told I needed to get over there and explain to Senator Steiner. I did that. And fortunately, she listened to the plea and realized that it was an addition to our courthouse, and Deschutes County now will be funded $15 million for that. I have been working on that for months, writing notes saying how important it is. It's not just Deschutes County's responsibility to fund that courthouse addition. It's actually a state responsibility. Benton County got $35 million for their courthouse. Clackamas County got $94.5 million already for their courthouse. I really thought it was important that Deschutes County get that funding. And, you might not see it, but I have been working for months on that. And I think it's incredibly important for you, the taxpayers, to know that.
Thank you. Doreen Tai. This is citizen input.
Morning, commissioners. Sorry for my lovely appearance. I was in my backyard working, and after the 15th Barron passed over me at over 90 decibels, I decided that I'm dropping my yard work and my irrigation and coming in, once again saying your abandonment of citizens of this community for that airport is absolutely inappropriate. And I've spent the majority of the past month in the hospital sick with nondescript stuff, which is completely consistent with being exposed to a half a ton of ultrafine leaded particulates per year, with no air monitoring, no abatement, no protections, nobody saying, hey, you can't put flight path maneuvers over the top of longtime citizens' homes. There's been no help, and it's completely inappropriate. The board is elected at large, serves as the public's elect advocate, and is the policy-making body of Deschutes County government. You are protecting the airport and aviation benefactors, and not the people of this community. And granted, they bring in money, but at what cost? How many grants do you have to get them to make you money? How much land has to be granted? How many lives are lost? Nearly a half ton of ultrafine lead, more specifically training maneuvers over longtime residents who don't fall under moving to the nuisance clauses. You've fully abandoned the residents of this county to the unconscionable noise and pollutants. Your lack of air monitoring or involvement with reviewing flight paths before they are set to protect citizens has not been done. Putting DBE businesses in this pollution to facilitate more funds and grants is unconscionable. Abandoning citizens and lands and grabbing lands for this type of growth is not what Central Oregon is about. And I feel like it's a dereliction of your duty to abandon us to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen.
Carl Shoemaker.
One of the planks on the Deschutes Republicans platforms is for we the people versus the Democratic Party for the elite. I guess they think the voters are the elite since they're trying to suppress the votes throughout the United States. What I really think they think of as the elite is the intellectuals, the teachers, the educated. There were two parties in Europe before I was born that did not like such elites. There was a war fought over that. They lost. They were on the wrong side of history. What I think of the lead is the 2%, the Koch family, the millionaire pundits on Fox News in New York, Rupert Murdoch, Lars Larson on his yacht in Portland, Oregon, Andy Ngo, Jeff Bezos in a super yacht that could not fit under a bridge in Europe. He asked them to take the bridge down for him. They said no. Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos in a super yacht that couldn't, Phil Knight of Nike, who tried to get Drazen elected governor in Oregon to the tune of $30 million so he could run a state from his skyscraper. He did not succeed. The chambers of commerce. Add to list below. Gonna need another couple of reams for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Is there anyone else requesting to speak on citizen input? Is there anyone online? Great. So thank you. This is citizen input at the beginning of our board meeting. The raised hand. If you can unmute. And if you're so BC volunteer says on our screen. Well, yeah, so at this time, as I say, we're offering this opportunity. Hopefully, I don't know if we're having technical issues or not. There's a raise hand feature. And we do see a raised hand.
Should they call in?
Well, as I say, I don't know where to go from here. Oh, okay, so maybe, yeah. Could be Lorelei watching. Okay, well, so let's move on. We'll make a time available if there's a request to speak by that same person. At this time, consent agenda, a couple items here.
So move the consent agenda.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Just I'll acknowledge item number 1. So Oregon Living with Fire. So this is kind of our Project Wildfire across multiple counties, 5-year commitment, but it's a lot of activity in that area right now. So it's really exciting to see this coming together. So with that, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you. And now on a lighter note, so item number 4, Mary Anderson, 25 years of service. If the DA wants to come up and say some words, we'll get to the mics first, and then we'll do a presentation and a photo. Yes, please. Yeah. That's a way to get the audio here. And I know you two have been partners for many years on this and in the office, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. This plaque honors Mary Anderson, and the inscription on it, I think, is perfect for Mary. It says, "With deep appreciation for your invaluable contribution and dedicated service to Deschutes County." I can't think of any person in our county, any person in our office who has provided more of what I would call invaluable, a invaluable contribution to the people of Deschutes County. She is the best prosecutor I know, the best trial lawyer I know, and I rely on her for advice and wisdom in everything. And I think without her, our office would be in a big hurt. And so I really appreciate her a lot.
Great. Well, let's get a photo for ourselves here too, and then let's see if we want to say something else.
Want to get up by this side?
Okay.
Little opportunity, here we go. Thank you very much for all the years of service to people.
Right hand person.
There you go.
I just wanted to say thank you. I really didn't want to be here in public. I just wanted to say thank you. This path has gotten harder and your work to help us retain deputies has been a lot. Because when we spend time training them and bringing them up and they leave for other areas that are easier to do and pay more, it's hard. So thank you for respecting their work and supporting them and helping us retain them.
Giving us a reason to invest in retention and recruitment efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership.
Yes,
The two of you together, the teamwork is outstanding, and we're really blessed in Deschutes County. So thank you, guys.
yes, that's the ever. I said it.
Well, congratulations. Thank you for your service. Sorry, the discussion off the mics for a moment, but it was very positive and supportive. At this time, item number 5, Deschutes County District Attorneys Association Collective Bargaining Agreement. Here's Whitney. Here we go. Everybody come on up.
Thank you, Pamela. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Whitney Hale, Deputy County Administrator. I'm joined by District Attorneys Gunnels, Human Resources Director Kathleen Hinman, Jessica Chandler from the DA's office, as well as Brooks. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Brooks McLean. I'm one of the deputy district attorneys in the office here, and I'm on the board for the association.
Thanks for joining us.
This morning, we're pleased to present the board a collective bargaining agreement with the deputy district attorneys. We've met with the board several times over the past few months in executive session, so I know that the board is familiar with the agreement. The union has voted to ratify a 3-year agreement. Just a few high points related to the agreement. This does create 2 new classifications within the deputy district attorney tiering. So there will be a DDA 1, DDA 2, and DDA 3 classification. The agreement includes a standard COLA range consistent with other contracts of 1% to 4% dependent on CPI. And it also includes standard longevity increases consistent with other contracts. I'm going to turn things over to
Mike, there we go.
I'm going to turn things over to District Attorney Gunnels in case he has any remarks related to this agreement.
Thank you, Whitney. The only remarks I really have is I support this agreement. I think it goes a long way in encouraging retention and improving our chances at recruiting if we do have a departure from our office. And I've spoken with you all several times now about the importance of retention of experienced prosecutors and what that means in the product that we provide to the people of Deschutes County, which is public safety. And I believe in this contract, and I think it is an improvement over what we've had previously. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So it's June 28th, and this current agreement expires on the 30th or the 1st of July. So it's really exciting to be able to do this at this time. We do have 3 different motions here, part of the package that was put together, negotiations back and forth for a while on this. So I want to thank all parties for being at the table and being real professional to get through this process. Any other comments?
Well, I wanted to express appreciation to the DA for highlighting for us how important provisions of this contract are and the improved wages and benefits for our existing DAs, deputy DAs are by essentially saying during our budgeting process for this year, I am not asking for more positions. It is the highest priority to focus on this contract and providing a better deal for our workers.
Thank you.
And definitely, I believe that retention, keeping people that are trained and have served for a couple of years is so critical. And I'm so glad this is a 3-year contract. And I'm really happy that we were able to add that small bonus to people that have put themselves through law school, which is, we know, a 3-year process, incredibly expensive. So if this will make a difference and your teamwork, as Mary said, the best DA ever for Deschutes County. So, thank you for coming up with this proposal to us and blending it together and knowing that we're really happy with the opportunity to make this operation continue on in the future.
Thank you.
So as to say, this is the conclusion of a process. Both parties have kind of seen the inner workings of this a few times throughout the process. So I don't know if we want to go into anything more specific or just get to the motions.
I'll do the first one.
Okay.
Move approval, a board signature of the collective bargaining agreement between Deschutes County and the Deschutes County District Attorneys Association effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026.
Second. That's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang. Yes. And chair votes yes. There's step one.
I'll do the second motion. Move approval of county administrator signature of the memorandum of understanding for the Deschutes County Deputy District Attorneys Association's tier implementation.
I'll second it.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you.
And the last
Step. Yep.
Last motion, move approval of county administrator signature of the memorandum of understanding for the Deschutes County District Attorney Association Retention Bonus Incentive Program.
Second.
Any other discussion? So on this item, I will not be supporting it. And it's just, we've got a big organization. There's a lot of represented groups, and this is going to, be another step that people are going to be looking at. So I just want to acknowledge that I absolutely appreciate everything that's done in the office and the folks that are there. I'm glad that we came up with this agreement and the new tiers also. So just a comment, calling for the vote or any other discussion. Commissioner Dare?
I did say earlier that going through law school requires 3 years. It's extremely expensive. And so I'm really hopeful that this retention bonus will make that difference for people to stay.
Colin?
What I would, the comment I would add is the county's compensation philosophy is to look at comps from other counties and to strive to be 5% above comps. To account for how expensive it is to live here, and what a challenge it is for people to come and take public sector jobs in our community. We're seeing both in this agreement and this specific incentive, and in a lot of the other collective bargaining agreements that we're grappling with right now. How possibly 5% may even still not be enough to make it possible for people to come and work here for the county. And so that's my rationale for supporting this incentive.
Great. So calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and chair will vote no on this. But really, as I say, that's a message to, how tight we're talking about these things. These are negotiations. This is it's been passed. So let's acknowledge that. Just pointing out that everything's getting real expensive, and this is a time of inflation and interest rates that a lot of moving parts right now. So thank you for everything you do. Congratulations. We've got it completed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 6. This is a public hearing on a remand of a plan amendment and zone change. Public hearing. Great.
Yes, do you think I might have to help?
So I'll get started on the top of this script. So this is the time and place set for hearing on file number 247-23398A concerning a request for consideration of a remand of a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change application to rezone and redesignate the property from agricultural exclusive farm use to rural industrial initiated by the applicant LBNW LLC.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And for the record, I'm Tarek Rawlings. I'm an associate planner with the Community Development Department. And just as the chair had noted before the commissioners today is those file numbers on remand here. I'm going to just share my presentation really quickly and get some of that background information. Correct, the file number for the remand today is the 247-23-000398-A, which is a continuation of the original file numbers 247-21-000, 881-PA and 882-ZC. It's an applicant initiated comprehensive plan amendment and zone change to change the comprehensive plan designation from agricultural to rural industrial and the zoning district from exclusive farm use to rural industrial. And just a little bit of background, background on the procedures today. The Board of County Commissioners will hear oral testimony, receive written testimony, and consider the testimony submitted at this hearing. The hearing is also being recorded. The board may make a decision on this matter today, continue the public hearing to a date certain, or leave the written record open for a specified period of time. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. Staff will give a report on this issue. We will then open the hearing to all present and ask people to present testimony at one of the tables or at the podium. You can also provide the commission with a copy of written testimony. Following the staff report, the applicant will provide their testimony. Following the applicant, any agencies will provide testimony, followed by persons in support and then persons in opposition. The applicant will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal, followed by staff closing comments. Record materials may be viewed at the project website, which is shown on this screen. This website includes the full record that's been continued that was originally associated with those the 247-21, the 2021 file numbers. So that's all included in this website here. This is a hybrid hearing with both in-person and remote participation. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address. I'll note that the board has established time limits for testimony. The applicant will have 30 minutes, agencies will have 10 minutes, members of the public will have 3 minutes, and the applicant will have 10 minutes for rebuttal at the end. Sorry, I thought that was me. If you are participating in person, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit to the board secretary at the side of the room, and you'll then be called up to the table to provide testimony. For remote participants, please indicate if you'd like to provide testimony by using the raise hand button in Zoom or by dialing *9 if you are participating via phone. The chair will then call on participants with hands raised to provide testimony. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another person during that person's testimony, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand it to me. If you are in person, please submit your written testimony to me after your testimony. And if you're participating remotely, you can submit your written testimony via email to me at tarek.rawlings@deschutes.org, which is shown on the screen here. Excuse me. The staff or the chair and staff are responsible also for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Prior to the commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflict of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify himself or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide this issue. At this time, do any members of the commission need to set forth any information that may be perceived as a conflict of interest?
So does any commissioner have anything to disclose? If so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed.
And I have nothing to disclose and I may proceed.
And I have nothing to disclose, and I can proceed also. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, the members of the hearings body, based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts of interest? Is there anyone online with the raised hand feature? Okay, seeing none. As no challenges are presented prior to opening the hearing, does anyone have any procedural objections to the public hearing? And is there anyone online? Okay, seeing none, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to give just one kind of clarifying statement at the outset. I just want to clarify some statements that were made on June 26th. More or less, we just reiterating some of the things that the board had clarified, but just making sure that's on record for today's public hearing. First, I want to clarify that the record presented before the board in this matter is a continuation of those original 2021 applications. That's outlined on the project specific website and the internal links on that website. And it includes all record materials associated with the 2021 files and the 2023 remand file itself. As a second point of clarification, staff would like to be clear that the scope of the remand hearing is limited just to the specific issue or issues on remand. In this case, it's the application's compliance with Goal 5 and Oregon Administrative Rule 660-023-0250, subsection 3. And so while the term limited de novo has been used in some instances to reference this type of a limited scope on a remanded LUBA issue, I just want to clarify that this hearing is in compliance with our code section 22.34.040 for remand proceedings, in that this is limited just to the scope of that single LUBA remanded issue, the Goal 5 and the Oregon Administrative Rule compliance. So I just wanted to be clear. We discussed that on Monday, but just putting that out still for record today in today's public hearing. So the location of the property, these are 3 different parcels. We went over a bit of this on Monday. They total 19.12 acres. They're along Highway 97 north of what's commonly known as the Deschutes Junction. The largest is about 15 acres, the smallest being about 1 acre. The applicant is the owner of the 2 smaller acres, smaller parcels. They're called the LB&W LLC is that entity. The larger acreage parcel is owned by last name Johnson. The surrounding zoning, it's largely exclusive farm use land, just like the subject property. To the north, south, and east, there's some open space and conservation adjoining the property to the south, and some nearby open space and conservation zoning to the northeast. There's also adjoining to the west is a rural residential zone, rural and a residential subdivision. Immediately to the west, you see that there's some surface mining and some multiple use agricultural 10 residential zoning to the southwest as well.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So open space and conservation, is that a base zone by itself? Or
It is. It's kind of an open space, more of a preservation, natural quality.
Is it a resource land? I guess is kind of the concept I'm trying to
I
discern.
believe it is considered. I have to check the comp plan designation really quick. I can do that.
Just a question.
Likely while the applicant's given their testimony.
Okay.
But yeah, it's one of the rare kind of pockets of that open space and conservation. So the original zoning designation and comprehensive plan designation was agricultural. That's the comp plan designation, and it was originally zoned exclusive farm use within the Tumalo Redmond Bend subzone. The proposal was to convert both the comprehensive plan designation and the zoning district to rural industrial. There was no specific use proposed, and ultimately this was approved by the board with conditions on December 14th, 2022. It was subsequently appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals in January, and then we've got their decision back in April of this year. So it was a narrow issue. The kind of how we'd mentioned before, it was the application's compliance with Goal 5 and Oregon Administrative Rule 660-023-0250 subsection 3. And quoted from that LUBA decision, the challenge decision allows new uses that could conflict with inventoried Goal 5 resources. And for that reason, the county is required to comply with the listed OAR. The applicant's submittal explains that a lot of the proposal on the subject property conditions do already comply with Goal 5. They've emphasized that it's been a long time that since they've originally applied, and they'd like a timely review and response by the review body. And then they just on Friday submitted additional information on the 23rd, which addresses kind of line by line that Oregon administrative rule, including Goal 5 analysis. So that's what we gave you a handout for on Monday. That's kind of largely what we're focusing on here in record for now. So there are some resolved issues that were part of that LUBA decision. The county's reliance on local rural industrial provisions for Goal 14 compliance was no longer an issue that was subject for debate. There was also a second item was the agricultural land quality for tax lot 301. Related to the applicant's Order 1 soil survey and the applicable ORS and OAR provisions around those Order 1 soil surveys. That was a resolved issue as well, basically finding that the Order 1 soil survey was valid. Then really a broad resolved issue was the need for Goal 3 or Goal 14 exceptions related to agricultural lands and urbanization respectively. No public comments have been received thus far. Just kind of gotten the applicant's submittals. It's what predominantly has made its way into record. And so really today, the next steps following today's public hearing are that the board could continue the hearing to a date and time certain. They could close the public hearing and establish open record periods for additional written evidence or testimony, rebuttal, and final argument, or they could close oral and written record. And just as a reminder, this is on a remanded timeline. So there's a 120-day timeline. So the final decision will have to be issued no later than September 14th of this year. So just a little bit of time sensitivity. I'll kind of go into the open record slides should you get to that point in your discussion, but I think that's really going to conclude my staff report for the time being. So I'll stop sharing my screen for now, and I'm available for any questions you might initially have before we likely just go into the applicant's testimony.
Great. So just confirming, so we'll have an applicant testimony. You mentioned agencies possibly.
If they're here, sure.
Yep. And then any other testimony and then rebuttal.
Yes, sir.
That's our steps here. So at this time, if the applicant's ready. Applicant representative.
Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Adam Smith. I'm a land use attorney with Robbie Williamson and Wyatt. We are representing the applicant LB&W LLC. My business is 360 Southwest Bond Street in Suite 500, Bend, Oregon 97702. I will note for the record, the submittal that we hurriedly got in on Friday has the wrong address. It has Robbie's Anchorage office address on there. So
I was wondering about that.
not moving to Anchorage. I'm still
We're
here.
flying in from Anchorage.
I did want to clarify one last point that I didn't hear in Tarek's presentation. My recollection is that only participants who or only testimony from participants who previously participated in the proceedings are allowed to testify during the remand proceedings.
So I'll acknowledge that Tarek's nodding his head yes, and we'll acknowledge that as part of the
Yeah,
hearing.
thank you for clarifying.
Very good.
There was, I think, some ambiguity on the scope of the remand, but the applicant concurs with what Tarek represented this morning. reading directly from Luba's decision, page 37, Luba stated here, the challenge decision allows new uses that could conflict with inventory goal 5 resources. And for that reason, the county is required to comply with OAR 660-023-025, subpart 3. So that analysis, Luba's determination that the map amendment zone change allows conflicting uses is what triggers a new EC analysis for the project. I think there was a little bit of ambiguity on whether or not there was an opportunity to argue that there's not conflicting uses or any of those kinds of things. And I just wanted to clarify the applicants we're taking Luba's decision at face value, and we're here to just help the county through with an EC analysis. And in our opinion, the Luba already made the decision that there could be conflicting uses that triggers EC. So we're moving on. So a couple of points of law on EC analysis. So first of all, what is it? An EC analysis is the analysis of environmental, social, economic, and energy consequences. Although consequences, it really means both good and bad consequences, things that stem from a land use decision involving the Goal 5 resource. In this case, the Goal 5 resource at issue is the county's Goal 5 program for scenic views. It's not, it's limited to just the scenic view issue. Additional points of law, straight from the rules, an EC analysis need not be lengthy or complex. My understanding of the law is it's the complexity and the length, the scope of the EC analysis is really in response to the complexity of the decision that's before the elected officials. In this case, I think the decision is pretty narrow. It's only dealing with 3 properties, only dealing with scenic view resources. And so the EC analysis can be fairly simple as well. It's certainly what we have presented is nowhere near as complex and as voluminous as past EC analysis is that county staff are prepared for much more comprehensive legislative actions. Elected officials have fairly broad discretion after considering EC consequences. That's a pretty key concept. The EC analysis is a decision-making tool. It's not outcome determinative. It doesn't dictate the decision that the county commissioners are then authorized and tasked with making. It's really a tool to ensure that you are considering the entirety of the impacts of the decision that you will make, but it doesn't then dictate that decision that you make. An EC analysis can group similar conflicting uses together. In the EC analysis that our consultant put forward, we're certainly doing that. There were a couple uses that we called out separately, but for the most part, when we're looking at the scenic view issues, we thought that the uses allowed under the RI zone could all be considered or mostly be considered as a group, and that's what we did, and that's allowed by statute, by rules. And last, the EC analysis is supposed to be adopted as part of the plan or land use regulations. Now that's a key concept. Means ultimately the EC analysis will be adopted as part of the county commissioner's findings, which then means it's your EC analysis. The applicant has put forward an EC analysis to start the conversation, but it's really the consideration of these impacts, what issues are studied, that's up to the county commissioners. And we're here, we're happy to do more work, look at additional issues, revise the EC analysis. I mean, we're at the end of the day, it's just like findings. These need to be reflective of the county commissioner's points of view on these issues. So stepping into the EC analysis itself. Any EC analysis consists of 4 steps: identify conflicting uses, determine the impact area, analyze the EC consequences, and then develop a program to achieve Goal 5 compliance. I'm going to walk through each of those here quickly. The first 2 are really quick. The first one, especially, identify the conflicting use. Well, Luba already did that for us. Luba already said in their decision that the uses allowed under the RI zone are different from the uses that were previously allowed under the EFU zoning, and that those could be conflicting. So identify the conflicting use. In this case, it's those uses allowed outright and conditionally under the RI zone. Those uses are listed in Deschutes County Code 18-100-010 and 18-100-020. Happy to list them, but I'm pretty sure the county commissioners are pretty familiar at this point. They've dealt with a number of projects dealing with the RI zone. So those are.
I think it'd be great if you listed them for anyone who's watching.
Oh, it'll take a bit of time. I'll read very quickly, and I hope it doesn't count too much against my time.
Consider it one of my questions.
Uses permitted outright include farming or forest use, primary processing, packaging, treatment, bulk storage, and distribution of the following products. Agricultural products, including foodstuffs, animal, fish products, and animal feed, ornamental, horticultural products and nurseries, softwood and hardwood products, including pulp and paper manufacturing, sand, gravel, clay, and other mineral products. Next, allowed outright residences for caretaker or night watchman on property, freight depot. I'm not going to read all the subparts if that's okay, but a freight depot, contractor or building material business or other construction related business, ice or cold storage plant, wholesale distribution outlet, including warehousing, but excluding open outside storage, welding sheet metal or machine shop, kennel or veterinary clinic, lumber manufacturer and wood processing, except pulp and paper manufacturing, class 1 and 2 rotor street projects, class 3 rotor street projects, operation, maintenance, and piping of an existing irrigation system operated by an irrigation district. So those are the uses allowed outright. Conditional uses. Let's see, any use permitted by Deschutes County Code 18-100-110, which is located within 600 feet of a residential dwelling. Any use permitted by the same provision, which involves open storage, concrete or ready mix plant, petroleum product storage and distribution, storage, crushing, and processing of minerals, including the processing of aggregate into asphalt concrete or Portland cement concrete, commercial feedlot, stockyard, sales yard, slaughterhouse, and rendering plant, railroad, trackage and related facilities, pulp and paper manufacturing, any use permitted by Deschutes County Code 18-100-010, which is expected to exceed the following standards: lot coverages in excess of 70%, or generating of any odor, dust, fumes, glare, flashing lights, or noise that is perceptible without instruments within 500 feet from the property line. Manufacture, repair, storage of articles of manufacturing from bone, cellophane, cloth, cork, feathers. It goes on to manufacturing plants. Processing, packaging, and storage of food and beverages, public land disposal site, transfer station, mini storage facility, automotive wrecking yard, wireless telecommunication facilities, utility facilities, manufacturing, storage, sales, rental, repair, and services of equipment, electrical substations, marijuana retailing, and psilocybin testing laboratories. So long list of things under both the conditional and outright permitted. Those are, I will say, just on comment of the RI zone, those are the uses that are allowed. We're not going into then all of the secondary limitations that ensure that those uses remain rural industrial uses, as I know the county commissioners are well aware because of past cases. So returning to the EC analysis, after we identify the conflicting use, the next step is to identify the impact area. Again, that's pretty easy in this case. The impact area is only the 3 properties at issue, because those are the only 3 properties where we're talking about a change in the use. And specifically, it's the portion of those 3 properties that are within a quarter mile of the center line of Highway 97. And that's based on the county's original establishment of the scenic views as a Goal 5 resource. And it's in essence the portions of the property where the current landscape management overlay zone governs. So it's the entirety of the 2 smaller properties to the south and the majority of the larger property to the north. So that's the impact area. And so now we get into the meat of this. That's the EC consequences. We hired a consultant to prepare an EC analysis for us, and that's included as part of our submittal on Friday. Again, it's relatively simple on purpose and by design. It could be expanded as the board desires. I'll just hit a couple of the highlights from that analysis. Looking first at the economic consequences, our analysis shows that there's a clear benefit to allowing the conflicting use from an economic perspective, and that makes intuitive sense. Allowing rural industrial uses in that location is going to have an economic benefit to property owners, to the neighborhood as a whole, to the county as a whole. And our analysis showed that it will have a minimum detriment from an economic perspective. Of course, having scenic view resources in the county increases tourism, encourages people to move here, to establish jobs, families here, and all those kinds of things. But when we are looking at the 3 properties at issue, our analysis shows that the scenic view resources from Highway 97, looking to the west over those 3 properties, is already pretty diminished. If you're looking at the Highway 97 corridor as a whole, it leads to certain conclusions, but when you really drill it down to this or microscopic property level, then you have other issues that you need to consider. And in this case, the properties at issue, there's a hill that rises directly behind those properties, and there's already substantial development on that hill. So if you're looking from Highway 97 center line across those properties, you're seeing a fair amount of existing development that is outside of the LM zone. This is not a circumstance where you're impacting these large scale views of this Cascades or other views of on an intrusive landscape. The views from this location are already significantly impacted. And that's a theme that you'll see throughout our EC analysis. So the next consequence, social. There's certainly positive impacts of having services nearby to residents. These are intended to be rural industrial uses. There's a number of likely beneficiaries that will be nearby to those services in the future. And then, of course, there's negative impacts to the views, but as we noted, they should be minimal because there's already substantial development that you see beyond the properties in question that are impacting that view resource. Environmental, there's some positive consequences. I mean, having RI uses, more RI uses at Deschutes Junction is certainly going to reduce travel times from rural residents that are needing those services, and that could help reduce carbon emissions. But there's no doubt that there's going to be some environmental impacts, especially from some of the more particularized uses on the list. We analyzed and called out concrete ready mix plant in particular. That type of use in that location is going to have negative environmental consequences. And energy, I think this is probably the least impactful of the four. As noted before, it could reduce travel distances to those services, which could have a positive impact on energy resources. It could have a negative impact. Some of those uses may require in and of themselves large energy demands. Again, the EC analysis that we prepared is really just a starting point for your conversation. We're looking for feedback from the county commissioners. From the majority of the county commissioners want us to analyze one issue. We're happy to go further to look at specific subsets of those issues to provide additional evidence. I mean, this is really your conversation, and we're here to help serve that conversation when it comes to the EC analysis. And I'll pause there and see if there's any questions before I get into the last step.
So I go to the big picture of land use, and I guess how we got here. So I don't know how far we want to go with this right now. But so was there an EC analysis originally for this application? And as I say, this may not be the applicant's, domain as much as
I'm
the
happy
whole,
to answer.
yeah.
No, we did not submit an EC analysis originally with this application. Our point of view is that the county's EC analysis that was performed in 1992, when the landscape management overlay zone was originally put in place,
was a reference.
addressed all development, and all development certainly includes development allowed under the RI zone. And so our position was that this was already, these questions have already been asked and answered by county commissioners in 1992. So now we're doing a specific EC analysis for just
that property. Yeah, so that was the concept I was trying to get clear.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to request this or suggest this, but when you were kind of talking about the potential visual impacts, it was very vertical. It's like, well, there's this spot, there's a hill behind it, there's development on the hill. I would like you to look at scenic resources in a more linear or horizontal kind of way. People will be driving down the highway 55, 60, 65 miles per hour. And there's it's important to think about, in my opinion, it's important to think about the cumulative effects of basically seeing more and more industrial development, in your view corridor, as you're driving up or down to the highway. We're seeing significant new industrial development right at Deschutes Junction. This is removed from that, but is creating essentially another, industrial visual thing in the near vicinity of that current visual impact.
Sure, I appreciate the feedback and we can certainly provide. I think the easiest way to kind of address that is with some more photographic evidence of the site and, just looking at it from a horizontal perspective and some of those kinds of things. I will note, Commissioner, that on the cumulative impact question, I think we're limited to just looking at the impact area, which is just the 3 properties in question here. I mean, this remand doesn't invite or necessitate that the county is redoing its entire landscape management overlay for the entire corridor. I understand and we'll certainly look through that issue, but my gut reaction is that the cumulative impacts, I think, is maybe something more suited if the county wanted to undertake updating the Goal 5 scenic resource inventory as a whole.
Yeah, well, there's what's legally required, and then there's the way that people actually experience the Highway 97 corridor visually as they're driving on it.
I understand entirely, and I'm not saying that we're objecting to looking into acknowledging under some of those consequences that there may be cumulative impacts. I'm just noting there may be a footnote to that consideration.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the last step, if there's no more questions on the EC analysis itself, is really then the options. Once the board has analyzed these EC consequences, both good and bad, where does the board go from here? As I noted before, the EC tool is not outcome determinative. It's a decision-making guidance. It ensures that you're casting a wide net in your consideration of these issues. But then once you look through all of those issues, the choice is still yours to make. Stated otherwise, the choice still falls in your lap. I mean, it's a choice that you then have to make in how you go forward. There's 3 options as dictated by the EC rules. Option number 1 is you prohibit the conflicting use, and I'll break these down further in a minute. Option 1, prohibit the conflicting use. Option 2, allow the conflicting use in a limited manner. And option 3, you allow the conflicting use fully. Now, translating those options into this particular case gets a little bit nuanced, but I think it's straightforward enough. So if the board were to decide to prohibit the conflicting use, that would mean denying the subject map amendment and zone change application because the conflicting use in this case are those uses that are allowed under the RI zone. So if the board is deciding to deny or to disallow the conflicting use, then you would just deny the map amendment zone change and the EFU base zoning would stay the same. The second option, you allow the conflicting use in a limited manner. That's when, right, you're allowing the conflicting use, but you're adopting some mitigation to limit the impacts of that conflicting use. So in that case, you would again approve the map amendment zone change, which changes the base zoning of the property. But then presumably you could just continue to apply the landscape management overlay zone to the subject properties, as that will limit the conflicting use, right? So it's putting the property in its current configuration with the landscape management overlay zone still applying, but with a new base zone underneath that overlay zone. The third option, you can allow the conflicting use outright. Now, in this case, allowing the conflicting use outright, that would mean approve the map amendment zone change, but then you are not required or necessitated to go forward with adopting a program to mitigate or limit that conflicting use. So in that case, that would probably mean doing something with the existing landscape management overlay zone, although you don't necessarily have to, as that landscape management overlay zone was developed for a previous Goal 5 program. So in short, allowing the conflicting use, or excuse me, prohibiting the conflicting use means you keep the base zoning the same. Allowing the conflicting use in a limited means that you change the base zone, but you keep applying the landscape management overlay zone. If you decide to allow the conflicting use outright, then you're allowing the base zone change, or excuse me, you're changing the base zone, but then there's a further conversation about what do we do about the existing landscape management overlay zone. The applicant is supportive of either option 2 or 3 in this case. This is kind of where we shift gears, and this is, where we're advocating for a specific point of view. The applicant's fine with either option 2 or 3 in this case. And there's really 2 compelling reasons for our point of view. First, the applicant never sought to change the landscape management overlay zone. We never asked for the property to be taken out of the landscape management overlay zone. We only ever asked for the base zone to be changed with the expectation that the landscape management overlay zone would continue in place and the mitigation measures that the county adopted in the early 90s would continue to govern. So we're certainly fine with option number 2. We're also fine with option number 3 because the scenic resources are limited in this particular location. The county commissioners can decide to allow the conflicting use outright. And that means that there's going to need to be a further conversation about what we do with the landscape management overlay zone. If the county commissioners directed that you take the landscape management overlay zone off of the property, there would probably need to be new notice and some new process that we would need to go through. And that's, again, not something that the applicant never necessarily sought out from the beginning. We're fine with the landscape management overlay zone. We've always been fine with the landscape management overlay zone. So that's really walking through the EC analysis in this case from our perspective. We don't think it's an overly complicated remand compared to many of the others that the county commissioners had to wrestle with. But I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that may come up, or I'll just come back and talk to you more on remand, or excuse me, on rebuttal.
Any questions at this time?
I'm still not, I still don't have a complete grasp on what allowing the conflicting use in a limited manner with mitigation looks like. How does that work?
So normally it's easiest to explain if we were creating a Goal 5 program from scratch, a brand new Goal 5 program. When the county commissioners decide that they want to allow a conflicting use, but in a limited manner, then the next step is to develop a program to achieve Goal 5 compliance. And that's when you would go forward and draft code criteria and everything else to limit the conflicting use, to mitigate the impacts of the conflicting use, which is the decision that was reached at the end of the EC analysis. In this case, that work has already been done. That landscape management overlay program has been in place successfully for decades. And so nothing necessarily requires the county commissioners to go reinvent the wheel for just these 3 properties. So if the county commissioners wanted to allow the conflicting use in a limited manner, you already have the landscape management overlay zone and it already applies to these properties. So the outcome is you just approve the base zone change and you keep the LM zone in place.
And then how would it actually work with specific applications for specific rural industrial uses? And what is mitigation? You use the word mitigation. What does that look like?
Yeah, the same way it works now. Whenever there's any development that's proposed within a quarter mile of the Highway 97 zone, you have to go through an additional step to make sure that the development itself is meeting the criteria in the landscape management overlay. So the county staff is looking at size of the buildings, the paint color, landscaping options that can minimize the visually obtrusive issues. It's the same process that the applicant would have gone through if they were proposing development in the EFU or with the EFU based zoning. They go through that same process again.
And there's no all of the outright uses and conditional uses, those are all still on the table. So you're not talking about saying, well, to allow conflicting use in a limited manner. You're not saying you're going to limit certain kinds of uses. We won't do these. We still want to keep these on the table. It's more a matter of later factors like the color of the building and things like that.
Correct, assuming that the county commissioners elect to mitigate using the same landscape management zone program that's been in place for decades. So the landscape management overlay zone does not at times you can have an overlay zone that prohibits certain uses that are allowed by the base zone, but that's not how the LM zone functions in this case. All the uses allowed by the base zone are still allowed outright or conditionally with the landscape management overlay. There's just additional criteria that an applicant needs to address to ensure that the scenic view resources are mitigated to the maximum extent possible. But that's how the county's LM zone program is but intended to operate and has in fact operated successfully for decades. So differing from like, for example, the wildlife area overlay zone where the overlay does change the menu of uses that are allowed in the base zone. That's not the case with the LM zone for scenic view resources from highways.
Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony, and we'll go from there, and we'll have you back for rebuttal. So are there any agency or other organization requests to comment at this time? Was there any plan for that, or is that just our procedure?
I hadn't heard any, but that's usually just our procedure.
Procedure, okay. So seeing none at this time, other testimony, support or opposed? Or information, please join us. And a blue page is available at the side for information.
Apologies, I skipped the blue page, but I'll fill it out after I speak. Thank you. Good morning, Chair DeBonne, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Rory Isbell. I'm a staff attorney with Central Oregon Land Watch. Our address is 2843 Northwest Lolo Drive, Suite 200, Bend, Oregon 97703. Land Watch is the party that appealed the county's decision approving these applications to the Land Use Board of Appeals that resulted in the remand order from LUBA that found that the county's decision allows industrial uses that could conflict with these inventoried Goal 5 scenic resources that exist on the subject property. Land Watch continues to be opposed to this application and these remand application materials that we're hearing discussed today. As you now know, these properties are within the county's inventoried Goal 5 scenic resources corridor. It's our position this isn't a narrow issue on remand that we've heard it characterized as today. Your comprehensive plan describes the county's scenic resources as one of the major qualities of the county that makes it what it is, that draws visitors and residents. And the Goal 5 process itself, as you've heard about, the EC decision-making framework is also not narrow. It's very broad. It asks you to consider energy, social, economic, environmental impacts of a decision that could allow conflicting uses with the Goal 5 scenic resources here. So this is a broad issue, not narrow. We contend that industrial uses, likely more than any other type of land use, are the most counter to preserving scenic resources. We heard the list of all the uses allowed in the county's rural industrial zone: manufacturing plants, concrete plants, commercial feedlots, freight depots, petroleum storage. These are about, some of the least scenic types of land uses one could imagine. The existing landscape management zone that we've heard described, it wasn't designed to address these industrial uses. These industrial uses weren't allowed on this property or outside, as you know, of a select few locations in the county in 1992. So any work in the Goal 5 framework to limit the impacts of industrial uses on scenic view resources has not been done. So that's the position we take counter to, I believe, what you just heard the applicant position on. So the EC analysis submitted by the applicant, it stated last Friday. We first saw it on Monday afternoon after your work session. We haven't had a full chance to digest it. So I do want to make sure that we request at least a 7-day open record period in which Land Watch would plan on providing a more detailed written response. At first blush, we do have several concerns with its scope and the information presented in it, whether it complies with Goal 5 as directed by LUBA and LUBA's remand order. And we look forward to detailing those concerns and would respectfully request the county make a decision to prohibit those conflicting industrial uses on the subject property here. Thank you.
So one question, so to prohibit those uses means denying the whole application at this point?
Yes, because of their conflicts with the scenic views resources on the property.
Just making sure I was clear on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone else to testify in this matter? So at this time, seeing none, is there rebuttal or any other comments? And then we can also talk about a record period.
Well, I'll be brief, only a couple of points to respond to. Central Oregon Land Watch's perspective that industrial views are, I think that it was said, some of the least scenic views from a view corridor perspective. That may be true. And I would chalk that up into the social, perhaps the social prong of the EC analysis. But the EC prongs there's not one that's weighted more favorably over the other. The county commissioners are tasked with considering all four consequences. And so, Land Watch can present that in their opinion. I'll chalk it up to maybe some of that falls under the social considerations. But there's three other considerations that need to come into the mix as well. And I think it's neither here nor there what the 1992 EC analysis considered. But for the record, the county did consider all development. It wasn't limited to one type of use or another type of use. Again, I think that's water under the bridge, as they say. LUBA already decided there's conflicting uses on these three specific properties. And so that's what we're going forward with in the analyzing.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or requests? Seeing none. And we'll talk about where we go from here.
Certainly. So what I've heard requested by in public testimony was at least a 7-day initial comment period. And that is typically followed by the rebuttal. I believe the applicant has discretion over what a potential final 7-day period would be if this was a typical 21-day open record period, but that's again the discretion of the board. So we did hear a request though for that initial 7-day at the least.
So basically, if we put that 7 out there, then we'd almost fall right into our 777, unless it's negotiated
With the applicant.
With the
certainly,
applicant
For
for some
final
reason.
period. That's my understanding, unless legal counsel has other
Okay.
input.
So then at this time, it would be closing an oral portion. If there's support for our open record period for 7 days, we could have some more information on it. This is a narrow, limited de novo hearing on just the matter before us also. Any thoughts?
Is there any other testimony? Okay, because you clearly said no one else can testify unless they actually already did send in.
Correct, unless they had standing in the previous, basically any of the previous public hearings or asked for notice or provided things into record, then they received notice about this remanded public hearing and just the initial notice of them initiating this remand. And from that list, I have not heard any public comments. It's just been the applicant's submittal and then the testimony you've heard today.
Okay, and the original ruling was then 31 years ago by the commissioners. The
The
1992
EC analysis?
Yes.
That's from 1992, correct?
Okay. All right.
And then, so it's been stated that the EC for this decision is a product of the county and the decision of the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
Is that, so that's applicant has provided a starting point or, a first work product on that, and then it would be up to community development in partnership with the board to come up with that, if that's where we go.
Correct. Yeah. There, and I mean, just to note, it would be, they've provided really a good framework for how they're on largely the kind of the tabled pages of their EC analysis. It starts on page 4 of Exhibit 1 of the applicant's submittal. You'll see this in there, but for instance, it's a really good starting point in that they've done a detailed analysis on 2 of the most impactful, I would, for lack of a better term, call them uses. And in this case, it was a wireless telecommunications facility and a concrete or ready mix plant. So they're making a case, and I don't want to speak for the applicant, but that those 2 are sort of standout uses that this analysis sort of focuses on as a starting point, I would say. And so just acknowledging that there potentially are more uses you could run through that specific of a review framework, that might be what the applicant's getting at, that if we wanted to add new uses, that would be at the discretion of the board. If who does that analysis is also sort of at the discretion of the board at this point. We have the applicant willing to go out and refine things like you've heard them say, but it'd be something we'd have to get a specific response in relatively short order in terms of what additional analysis you might be looking for. But I just wanted to point out that it is a good start. It's two of the more large scale impactful uses, and so.
And they also did electrical substations too.
Correct, kind of at that later table. Yeah, and maybe the applicant can speak a little
Yes.
more to that.
If I may, Chair.
Please.
Our analysis called out those two uses because in those two specific prongs, we thought that looking at all of the uses collectively didn't capture some particularized concerns. So the concrete mix, the concrete batch plant is the best example of, we thought that had more attenuated impacts on the environmental prong, and so we call that out separately. With all due respect to Tarek, we didn't only analyze those two uses. We analyzed all of the uses, but for the most part, when we're looking at the scenic view resource at stake, all of the different uses allowed in the RI zone are going to have similar impacts, except for these two callouts, these two uses that we separated into narrow areas. Does that make sense? As I stated during my presentation, you can lump uses together if they have similar impacts to simplify an EC analysis. Again, the EC analysis is a decision-making tool. It doesn't need to be lengthy or complex. It's really tailored to the decision at hand. From our perspective, the impacts to the scenic view resources are pretty similar from one type of RI zone use to another. But just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. That's all very accurate.
Okay, so the date was like September
14th.
end of the record.
September 14th.
period for this.
120th day, yes, yes.
So sounds like 7-day record period was requested. We can acknowledge that. If there's support, we get to closing the oral portion of this, go for a 7-day open record period, and then
I can
response and final argument.
And I can display those dates once we
Okay.
can get a motion going.
So yeah, let's go with that as the guidance right now.
I'll go unless the applicant has kind of other thoughts on their final legal argument. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly just for the purposes of showing some of these open record dates. The initial open record period would end at July 5th at 4 p.m. That's 7 days from now. And any of those submittals would need to be received prior to 4 p.m. If they're electronic, they have to be received by the county's server prior to 4 p.m. or at 4 p.m. The rebuttal period would extend until July 12th, an additional 7 days. And then if the applicant chooses, they can, their final argument would be due no later than July 19th at 4 p.m. an additional 7 days later for a full 21-day open record period. And really, that's kind of everything we have for today, housekeeping and everything on the open record period. I'm available really for any last questions you might have.
Any questions? Yeah. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, the oral portion of the public hearing on this matter, and leave the written record open as stated.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Have a good morning.
Thank you, Tarek.
Right. That was item number 6 on our agenda. At this time, item number 7, public hearing application for 2023 Community Development Block Grant. We'll get introduced to the topic and have a public hearing on the matter and then proceed.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. Joining me is Andrew Spreadborough with Neighbor Impact. He's the Deputy Executive Director and has been working closely with us on the process.
Saw you on Monday also, so welcome back. Yeah.
Thank you for the time.
I would recommend the Chair open the public hearing.
So this will be a public hearing on the matter of Community Development Block Grant application.
Also, I just want to acknowledge Stephanie Robinson has been working with us on the process. She's running the video in the back, so she's not up with us this morning. Just as background, on April 12th, the board approved gave approval to apply for a community development block grant through Business Oregon. Just for the audience, the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, are grant funds that come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, comes to the state, and then through Business Oregon, it's distributed through the communities throughout Oregon. The purpose of CDBG is to expand economic opportunities and provide housing and suitable living environments for low and moderate income individuals. With the approval from the board to apply, staff has met with Neighbor Impact and Business Oregon to kick off the process. And one of the first steps is to hold a public hearing, which is happening today. In terms of timeline, the application period will begin on July 1st. Intakes or pre-application submissions will be due on August 31st. And final applications will be due on September 30th. We can expect grant award announcements by the end of November. And over the next couple of months, the county will work in partnership with Neighbor Impact to complete the application and submit. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew, who will provide additional comments and also will read the public notice into the record.
Well, good morning again, and thank you for the time. Yeah, as a first step, Business Oregon, the funding agency, requires that we read the public meeting notice, so I'm going to do that. Let's take a couple moments. The notice reads, Deschutes County is eligible to apply for a 2023 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate incomes. Approximately $11 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2023. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive for a housing rehabilitation project is $500,000. Deschutes County is preparing an application for a 2023 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon for the Central Oregon Regional Housing Rehabilitation Project, which will provide home repair and rehabilitation loans to homeowners in Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties outside of Bend and Redmond. And these are cities that are direct recipients of Community Development Block Grant funds. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 30 persons, of whom 100% will be low or moderate income. A public hearing will be held by the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, June 28 at Deschutes County Services Building, 1300 Northwest Wall Street, Bend, Oregon. The purpose of this hearing is for the Board of County Commissioners to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about community development and housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with Community Development Block Grant funds, and hear about the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by June 28 at the Deschutes County Services Building, 1300 Northwest Wall Street, Bend, Oregon. The public may also comment by emailing citizeninput@deschutes.org or leaving a voicemail message at 541-385-1734. Both oral and written comments will be considered by the Board of County Commissioners in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Please contact Stephanie Robinson, Grants and Operations Specialist at 541-330-4627 if you need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the meeting. For more information about Oregon Community Development Block Grants, the proposed project, and records about the county's past use of CDBG funds are available for public review at Deschutes Services Building, 1300 Northwest Wall Street, Bend, Oregon, during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify Stephanie Robinson, Grant and Operations Specialist at 541-330-4627 so that appropriate assistance can be provided. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result from the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required and reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. Thank you. And this notice was published for a week in advance of this hearing. And
Thank you very much. That explains the big picture. That's obviously.
Andrew, you said 30 persons and our memo says 25.
Yeah, that 30 was published. These are estimates. This is based on our previous project. We operated a previous round of funding through City of Prineville, same program. We ended up serving 10 households with 25 residents. And so, you know, these are all estimates. 25 to 30 is an estimate, depends on how many are in the household, how many projects we end up awarding, but should be in that range.
So we're not talking houses, we're talking people.
Those are individuals, yeah. I would estimate we could help 10 to 12 households. Again, it depends on the specific projects, the budgets for each of those projects. We don't know in advance what we're going to fund, but we're seeing projects in the range of 30 to 35,000. Some could be higher. It really depends on the scope of work.
So are these actually then grants to the people or are they loans?
Loans to the homeowners. So eligible applicants are low and moderate income homeowners.
And are these the grants that then are paid back when they sell the house?
Yes. The loans are deferred.
And is this the fund that takes out 100,000 to run it like last time? I mean, I remember something like this and it was, you know, it was only getting 300,000 to the people and then they had to pay back. And what's the interest rate today do you have any idea?
We establish the interest rate. Right now, our housing rehab program has an interest rate of 6%. So it's below market rates currently. These are deferred loans, but they do revolve. Yeah, the idea is these loans are paid back, they're relent into the future. And that's how we operate our lending program.
Can you discuss what other opportunities people have to have access to credit in these cases? I mean, I'm guessing that we are talking about households that would be severely constrained in terms of having access to financing,
Right.
and particularly at these kinds of rates.
Yeah. I mean, the households that we serve are generally considered unbankable from a loan perspective in terms of acquiring capital to do home repairs and rehabs. And remember, these are health and safety repairs. These are roofs, replacing or repairing wells, foundations, siding, whatever repairs are needed to maintain the integrity of the house and keep the homeowner in the home. And generally, yeah, these are low income households, owner occupied units that just cannot obtain financing due to credit, very low income, what have you. And so that's kind of the target population we're serving here.
Okay. So if you're unbankable, you know, taking out a 6% loan that you don't have to pay back until the time of sale of your home is actually, I would consider that a pretty good opportunity. Well, my other question was, how long has it been since Deschutes County put forward one of the CDBG funding applications?
You know, I don't know the date. I do know that Neighbor Impact's lending program originated through CDBG, the CDBG program. And for a period of approximately 1990 through the early 2000s, we applied annually in partnership with local governments. I know Deschutes County had at least one grant application. It may have been more during that period. Neighbor Impact kind of went away from that program for a few years, and we've just reinvigorated that process. Again, we just worked with City of Prineville on a grant that closed out recently. So I know the county has been an applicant, but it's been quite a while.
I thought we looked at this not that long ago. Is this a repeat of that? Because that's why those numbers, I was going, are these people going to have to pay interest in it? They're going to have to pay 6%. I mean, these are people that this is going to be like at the end of their sale when they can finally sell their home. And then they're going to have all that deferred interest on top of, and the $25,000 or $30,000, and they're going to get less money than what they will remember they should be getting. So, it seems like it wasn't that long ago. I already went through this scenario. And you're saying this is the first time we've done this?
I'm not saying that. We've been before the commissioners a couple times. You're correct. At the April meeting, you gave us the okay to proceed on an application, and this is part of the application.
Okay, so this is that same one from April, because I actually had told our congressman, I said, gosh, 100,000 for, only the people that really need the help are only getting, 75% of the funding. I feel like they should be, we should be getting more for them. I know that there's a tremendous need out there to keep people in their houses that need a new roof, or they need new windows, or they need something in order to stay. I know the Habitat program in South County does a lot of work like this. And I'm sure this is from April then, because I was saying, hey, people need more help staying in their homes.
Great, which is why we're applying for this program. Absolutely.
Well, I would just like to have like 350,000 go to the program. That's helping maybe 2 more families.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and we agree. I mean, the entire intent of this program is to serve as many as we can. We haven't established the budget yet. We know the maximum amount we can apply for. The state of Oregon does provide funding to operate the program, and our lending program, it is a challenge to fund. We don't have a dedicated tax base for our lending program. We don't have ongoing operational funding. We're funded 2 ways. One is grants. So grants to pay our staff, to put together the loan applications, to service the loans, to, all of the steps, site inspections, all the filings with the property deeds and so forth. So we receive grants like this to provide that financial support and interest from the loans. Those are the only sources of income. So I hear you. We would love to drive down the cost of having staff in place to do this work, but we just don't have any other way of paying the people to operate this program. So we do try to minimize that. We try to diversify the funding, get as many grants as we can to support folks, but we're also operating within the kind of the confines of the CDBG program. They want to see a grant administration budget allocation. They want to see a program administration component of the budget because they want to know that this program is being managed according to the rules and the requirements. So we'll do our best to drive down that cost. We haven't finalized the budget. Be happy to work with county staff on that.
Well, is it a 10-year loan then? Or is there a limit to the amount of time? They don't have to sell then, but then, what is their payment going to be if they haven't paid they're not paying any interest that whole period, right? So it's just building interest on top of their 30,000 or whatever they got. Okay.
So I see this program as a stopgap against homes becoming uninhabitable and being condemned or foreclosed or any other really bad outcome that can come from your home falling into complete disrepair. So this, from my perspective, this program is a tremendous resource to maintain low and moderate income housing in our community that otherwise might just disappear, might a couple of years later be scraped and have something another housing unit, but far more expensive and far less accessible to working and moderate and low income people in our community. So I am very supportive of moving forward with this program.
So this is a public hearing on the matter. Is there anybody asking to speak on this topic in the room? Is there anybody online with a raised hand feature? So this is the official public hearing for the application for a 2023 Community Development Block Grant. See no request to speak. I'll close the public hearing on the matter. We've had lots of great conversation already. Is there any other comments or what's the next step?
The next step will be approval to submit the grant to Business Oregon as proposed, unless the board would like to change the application.
Great.
So we can't apply for like $500,000. Are we really limited to the 400,000?
Under the kind of the category we're applying under, yes.
Even though we're 3 counties?
Yeah, it's certainly part of our the scope of our legislative activities for us to advocate for the community development block grant program to have larger amounts of funding available. If we believe in the program and the opportunity. And I'm also guessing that if we are concerned about that essentially the administrative costs of the program, that if this was done at a larger scale, probably we would get some economies of scale in terms of administration. So it might not be a quarter of the money. It might be, significantly less if there was basically a larger volume of activity.
Is there a motion for applying?
I move approval of submittal of grant application to Business Oregon for community development block grant funds.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Neighbor Impact,
you,
it's good
Andrew.
work out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the other day, we were talking about how great of a deal it was to have Neighbor Impact administering workforce housing grants for, only $400 per transaction. So I know that Neighbor Impact is working very hard to try to serve people, serve as many people as possible at the lowest cost possible.
Thank you. Item number 8, Oregon Health Authority grant agreement for public health. I was just going to say, I didn't quite get through this whole thing.
Oh,
It was printed out for us. I'm just saying.
good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Heather Keisner, District Public Health Director. And
Cheryl Smallman, Business Officer with Health Services.
okay, so I'm here today to seek approval of chair signature of document 2023-606, which is the Oregon Health Authority Agreement. And as you're all aware, the Oregon Health Authority Intergovernmental Agreement really outlines all of the program descriptions as well as elements and reporting requirements for Deschutes County as the local public health authority. And this one is for fiscal year 2024 as well as 2025 and funding for fiscal year 2024. So within the IGA, really our individual public health program elements, which is really that core public health work that we do here at the local level. And each program element has a set of program descriptions, operational, as well as reporting requirements that are outlined in that intergovernmental agreement. And for this year, there's also 2 new program elements that are outlined in there, as well as the staff report. One is PE 0112, which is infection prevention training for our CD team, as well as program element 5105, which are CDC kind of one-time public health infrastructure funding to be spent by November 30th, 2027. Additional funding is really also anticipated in near future amendments as we kind of await the final OHA budget and as outlined kind of here in the staff report of some of our individual program elements. So I will probably be back soon for future amendments for the budget. That's all I have. Is there anything you want to add?
I think that when we look year over year, we do notice that that if we are fully funded as anticipated, it will be a reduction of 1.1 compared to the previous year. However, most of that is related to known decreases, and because last year we had quite a bit of carry forward for COVID funding as well as public health modernization. So nothing abnormal here from our standpoint.
But it seems timely. We're doing it right before the end of this fiscal year, which is good. And as you already acknowledged, there'll be follow-on amendments to this also.
So one question I have is, so this is, we see a variety of agreements with OHA kind of flow through over the course of the year. This one is the primary public health agreement with OHA. What other agreements with OHA might we see for the public health division coming through, in the next 6 months to a year?
So, there'll be times where they'll get like an additional grant from CDC or some additional funding that they want to then pass on to LPHAs. So that would be an amendment, or that would also come through. We're looking at potentially coming here soon for potential MRC grant that OHA just received from CDC to support medical reserve corps. So those kind of things happen throughout the year when it's oftentimes when there's an additional grant that OHA has received from CDC or additional funding that then is kind of moved to LPHAs at that level that we want to apply for. Is there anything?
Yeah, and I think historically it would have been things like the early intervention services outreach grant. They're starting to funnel them through this base IGA, intergovernmental grant agreement. So the grant that she just spoke about, the MRC, will come through an amendment. That EISO, early intervention, is now through the intergovernmental agreement. So we're seeing a streamlining moving forward to this agreement.
Yeah, we're trying hard as far as local public health to really push OHA to move more through amendments and put things within our overall intergovernmental agreement within those program elements, because that's what we really work off of. Those are kind of really outline our responsibilities, the triennial review we go through every 3 years to look at what we're doing, how well we're doing. That's all part of this kind of base main intergovernmental agreement.
So there's over time, there's a move towards consolidation.
Yeah.
And then amendments to this as opposed to a whole lot of other moving parts.
Mm-hmm. That's the goal.
Okay, good discussion. So at this time, it's a motion for approval.
I move approval of chair signature of document number 2023-606, an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for grant funding.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
I was going to ask you all, I was at my LGAC meeting last Friday morning in Salem, and Dave Baden, the interim health director, was not there. He's been at those meetings consistently. And I was just wondering, has there been a new director appointed? I don't see one yet.
Not yet. I think they are in interview process, but
Okay.
they have not chosen one yet.
Is he, do you think he's in that mix? I think he was the chief financial officer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah, but he's still interim at this.
Yes, yeah, he just wasn't at the meeting, but yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more question. So you mentioned that overall this is a $1 million+ reduction from prior year, and a lot of that is about COVID response. And you just to understand better how that's showing up in terms of staffing. A lot of that COVID capacity was it was temporaries or limited duration type people or contracted, or is that am I thinking about that correctly? That kind of the capacity that we're losing was not regular regular position capacity.
Yes, we have that phase down approach currently slated, and most of that is related to the limited duration FTE.
Right. Yep. And are there people who were in limited duration positions, good people who are in limited duration positions for COVID services, COVID response services, are there other places for them within public health or to go to? Kind of are some of those people migrating to different positions within the county?
So we'd had 3 positions in this fiscal year. Some are moving on to graduate school, others are going other places. As we continue on looking, we're really looking at this next biennium with the modernization funding and other funding as far as what are those core preparedness services we need to maintain and how do we do that. So that's an area that we're really prioritizing as we move forward, especially with modernization, those kind of buckets that I talked about during the budget meeting, communicable disease, shoring that up, environmental health, as well as preparedness, risk communication, and community outreach. We've done a pretty good job with CD right now in environmental health and in the last biennium. And so we're going to really look at what are those positions as we move out of COVID that we still need to make sure that we're providing those services in a different capacity, but really making sure that we have that core preparedness program to be able to respond to all emergencies. Like yesterday, I was sitting in a tabletop exercise as we prepare for smoke and health, and what does that look like? And I was excited to see all the people around the room that were really working on this effort. So,
Thank you.
mhm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again for coming back to Deschutes County.
I'm excited to be back. Thank you.
I'm glad you're excited and we're excited to have you.
Okay, next item number 9, award of an agreement for sole source for solid waste management consulting services.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Chad Santola, Director of Solid Waste. This agenda item actually has 2 steps to it. The first is moving for approval of a resolution authorizing a sole source procurement of consultant services with parametrics for phase 2 of the landfill solid waste facility siting effort. And the second item is move approval of board signature for an agreement with parametrics for the phase 2 effort. We've been working with parametrics for a little over 18 months on the solid waste facility siting effort, looking throughout the county for potential sites for siting a new facility. Ultimately, we come to a short list of two sites, and parametrics has completed the most of the work for phase 1 of the agreement that we executed with them. The motion to do a sole source procurement is driven by the amount of experience that parametrics has gained over the past 18 months working with regulatory agencies, interest members of the public, as well as getting familiar with the sites that we have on the short list. The other aspect of this is the time element. We have a relatively short timeline. Landfill reaches capacity in November of 2029. So we want to keep the momentum moving forward on the siting effort. With parametrics, they haven't done the work today to kind of keep that momentum moving forward to continue with the process. So that's essentially it.
Well, and previously parametrics was selected through a vibrant and open selection process. So this is kind of phase 2. We just acknowledged that the first step into this was very open and robust.
I think I mentioned it at the award of the agreement with parametrics 18 months ago that in my career, this is probably the most rigorous selection process I've ever gone through. And we have a lot of confidence with parametrics. They have an excellent team of people working with them on this, on this project.
Great.
Chad, I'm tracking all of the, all of the good reasons why we would want to sole source this contract and continue to work with parametrics. The time it'll save us, the relationships and institutional knowledge built, all of those things, and that's compelling. The one of the things that kind of concerns me about this is wondering whether it was clear to people, the entities who competed for this contract 18 months ago, that this was like a possibility or a high likelihood that you land the first contract, there's a good opportunity for you to get the second contract sole sourced, because if that wasn't clear to everyone at the time, then you could just imagine that entities who were proposing at the time would have, might have competed differently, invested more in their proposals at the time. And so can you comment on that at all? I mean, did people have a sense that if they landed that phase 1 contract, that there was a pretty good chance that they would be able to secure phase 2?
Sure. During the selection process, so we went through a request for qualifications process first and discussed in depth with the 3 candidate firms that made it through that process. Everyone acknowledged that the end game was to get to a single site for the facility.
The reason we kept the scope of work limited to the phase one part of it, and this was discussion was shared with the three candidate firms, that it was not realistic to provide a detailed scope of work or cost estimate for what phase two would involve. Until we get down to a short list of sites, looking at those sites in detail, it would be highly speculative at the early stage. And that was part of the conversation with all three firms during the selection process.
Thank you.
I would just like to say Parametrics handled the Terrebonne sewer project, and I know that they did an excellent job. They were there, I think, when we started that in 2019, the third study, and really happy that you're happy with the quality of their work. And when I was first elected in 19, we said we had 10 years to not, and you're still saying the same thing. So yeah, I think we need to full steam ahead.
I agree with you on your assessment of Parametrics. I've worked with a lot of firms over my career, and they're definitely one of the better organizations I've worked with over time. They have a good team of people. The local office is there when we need them, and the background team that works with it is very well qualified for the project.
Thank you for those great words.
So there's a resolution justifying this sole source contract with Parametrics.
So can I move approval of resolution number 2023-038 for the sole source procurement of solid waste management facility siting phase 2 consulting services with Parametrics Incorporated?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So the next step is a contract.
So we have negotiated a scope of services and contract for the phase 2 work with Parametrics, a total dollar value of $799,220. The phase 1 project was roughly about $400,000. The majority of that work was desktop efforts, coordinating meetings, things like that. The second phase involves a lot more field work. They'll have a variety of scientists, cultural specialists out on the 2 sites doing investigative work, and there'll also be some drilling and hydrology and geology assessments on the property. So the cost of those field services are a little bit more expensive than what it takes to do a desktop exercise. So that kind of counts for the difference in price between the phase 1 and phase 2 agreements.
Bunch of subcontractor activity associated with this contract.
They have a very broad team of people that'll be involved with this, both in their office as well as sub-consulting firms.
Okay. Any questions or a motion?
No, thank you for that clarification.
I'll move approval of board signature of document number 2023-596 with Parametrics Incorporated for solid waste management facility siting phase 2 consulting services in the amount of $799,000, $799,220.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Commissioners.
Thank you.
Chad, I guess, some of the benefits of this sole source contract, the relationships, the institutional knowledge, the familiarity with the sites, a lot of that does reside with specific people who have been working at Parametrics. Do we, have any sense of, the continuity of Parametrics staffing who will be working on this project for us?
The visibility, the staff you've seen to date have been primarily the major players and coordinators for the project. During the site screening process, the majority of the specialists and scientists that'll be working on phase 2 have been involved. If you recall, there were those large tables generated for each of the sites. Those desktop exercises were conducted by the staff that will be doing all the field work as well. So there's not a lot of new people coming on board for phase 2. They've been involved since the start.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Just off the top of your head, Chad, the Roth East site is about $100,000 more. Is there the Moon Pit site has just been, given the total amount of $250,000 approximately. Why is that one $100,000 more?
Well, it's actually because the other one is $100,000 less. Moon Pit's an active mining operation.
Oh,
They've done
okay.
a lot of geology, hydrology, cultural, environmental work to do the operations that are currently underway out there. So there's some information sharing that we're gaining, working with Hooker Creek on that site.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I also just wanted to ask, is this the last item where Chad will be appearing before us as the
Oh,
director
there
of,
you go.
as the director of solid
Good
waste?
catch.
Perhaps I should have
Almost
introduced
slipped away
myself.
from us.
Maybe I should have introduced myself as the outgoing director.
There you
The
go.
The incoming director will be presenting another agenda item shortly here, but yes, this will be my last formal action with the committee.
Catch.
Well, I hope we can take this opportunity to publicly thank you for your many years of service to Deschutes County. Advancing our keeping an eye on advancing, managing solid waste services, trying to provide the best value to the people of Deschutes County, while one of the things I particularly appreciate is minding our environmental stewardship responsibilities as the governing body for solid waste here at Deschutes County. So thank you for all of
I
that.
appreciate those words. It's been a very rewarding career working for Deschutes County.
Well, yeah, thank you. June 28th, just a couple more days. Thank you so much for your service for the.
He's
people
not
of
counting
Deschutes County.
either.
I know, it's
He's not
getting
doing
shorter
it
every
now.
moment.
4:15
And you've got it on your watch, right? I know. I'm sure your family is very excited to have you. And I hope, you've got some great plans, travel plans. And then if you want to come back, you can always be a consultant.
Part time.
I actually will be on board for some period of time afterwards as a consultant for the department and the county. So
Good.
That's
Leave your
great.
Phone number. That.
thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I was just going to say, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly what I was going to do, is wanted to make sure that we recognize Chad for 24 years of service.
24 and a half.
24 and a half. Gosh, we almost reached that 25-year mark, but just on behalf of all of us, Chad, thank you so much for
Thank you very
everything
much.
you've done. It's just
Should we have a photo with him, even though we don't have a plaque? Wouldn't that be kind of sweet?
can. It's
Sure.
Is that okay if we don't have it? I know you've got your favorite jacket on.
Favorite team.
Oh, maybe we should get him a plaque that says 24 and a half.
Special plaque.
Oh, it says Beavers. Oh, my gosh.
I should have worn my pet shirt.
Yes.
There you go.
All right, one,
Retirement photo.
2, 3. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 24 and a half.
Congratulations.
All right, item number 10, intergovernmental agreement between Deschutes County and Oregon Judicial Department for courthouse improvements.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Deputy County Administrator Whitney Hale.
And Lee Randall, Facilities Director.
So joined by Trial Court Administrator Angie Curtis here in the back. Just want to recognize Angie for being here today. Commissioners, we're here before you seeking board approval of county administrator's signature on an IGA with the state. And this document really serves as a mechanism to transfer funding from the state to the county for the purposes of the courthouse expansion project. As I know, the board is intimately aware, the county was granted $1.5 million in the 2022 legislative session, and that is the bulk of the funding that's coming through in this agreement to the county. The remainder of the funding that's included in this IGA is going to serve to allow OJD to facilitate the passing through of some dollars to purchase FF&E for the project, for the expansion portion of the project. And there's an additional $500,000. Those two components are bundled together in this agreement. We've been working on this agreement with county legal and our partners at the state for some time. Through this process, we've recognized that we have a number of agreements with the state relating to use of the courthouse and the county and the state's relationships in these areas. So this has been a lengthy process for us as we've reviewed those prior agreements and worked toward this agreement that we have before you today. So with that, staff is happy to take any questions that the board may have related to this agreement. Lee, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
The additional agreements that we would anticipate would be for ongoing maintenance and transfer of audiovisual equipment. So we expect to be back to the board with that agreement in the future. And then with the announcement of potentially additional funds, there would be a similar agreement for future funds that may be transferred to the county for the courthouse expansion.
Great. Well, it's been talked about for a while. We knew this money was coming. Thank you very much for getting it all together. It's nice to know that we're going to be able to build a building and put some stuff in that building and make it operational. Pretty exciting.
And according to the contract, it says that the project must be completed no later than June 30th of 26.
That is our target date, and for the purposes of the IGA, we did need to include a closing date, and so that's our target, and we will do our best over the next few years to meet that.
Great. How exciting.
I'll move approval of county administrator's signature of document number 2023-637, an intergovernmental agreement between Deschutes County and the Oregon Judicial Department for courthouse improvements.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. $2 million towards the project.
So when will people start living in a construction zone?
Yeah.
The short answer is it depends, but our goal is early next spring to hopefully start with an early work package. We're on target to submit construction documents to the city of Bend for review in late summer, early fall.
And then, this phase of work will be completed, and will there be like a quiet period before the next really big expansion work begins, or is it all just flow together?
So it will flow together. Technically, the remodel work that's being funded through this agreement likely will happen toward the end of the project. And so it's just that those funds became available prior to the others. So realistically, the project will be phased for the expansion portion first. And then once we occupy that, we'll be able to go back into some of the existing public service counter areas, for example, and create the new hearing room, some additional offices for the trial court administrators' offices, for example, and then some remodel related to the other areas that are shown in the attachment to the document. Those remodel areas likely would happen after we're able to occupy the new expansion.
Thank you for clarifying that before.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 11, a resolution establishing solid waste disposal fee waivers. The memo says Director of Solid Waste on this one, so we're getting there.
Yeah, for the record, Tim Brownell, incoming Director, Solid Waste, for a couple more.
A few more days.
Couple more days, and I've been honored to have this title and work with Chad as the Director. So before you today, Chair DeBonne, members of the Commission, we're seeking approval of Resolution 2023-040, which establishes the solid waste disposal fee waivers for fiscal year 2024. And these are fee waivers that have historically been granted to nonprofit organizations that are in the reuse and resale of materials, which helps divert items from the landfill. So we grant waivers for the disposal of the items that they are not able to recirculate back into into our community. So the policy that we're following grants a maximum fee waiver of $5,000 per entity. This year, we're asking for $40,000, up to $40,000 in fee waivers. There are 6 organizations that have requested $5,000 apiece, and the remaining 5 have a lesser amount that we're looking to provide to them. Additionally, in the report, we've provided an update of the fee waivers that the Director of Solid Waste and Solid Waste Department has granted towards ongoing cleanup efforts on public lands and other similar efforts, as well as waivers that have been granted to the CDD for some of their code enforcement and cleanup activities. So these are in front of you for your approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I thought it was interesting that we have only used the credit at up to 20, like almost 24,000 through the end of May of this year for people that had asked for it. So maybe they're all going to come in tomorrow. Or
Yeah,
Friday.
there could be a big rush.
Yes, there could be a big, like, you've got a credit.
Yeah,
Yes.
there historically there have several of these have not hit that maximum credit. They had some reductions during the COVID period, so we're trying to see if their business will pick back up or their use of the service will pick up. We do have a couple such as have the Ben Redmond Habitat for Humanity that always uses their full allotment, as does the St. Vincent de Paul of Redmond.
Exactly. Yes.
And I know it's a big time a function of who's on site, the leadership, the institutional knowledge. So, I mean, if people rotate around, all of a sudden they forget about this program and they still have the waste, streams that they want to deal with. So it comes and goes. That's what I've seen. But yeah, thank you very much for presenting the spreadsheet and the other, waivers that have been provided for the community. It's really good to kind of see the numbers all in one place.
I'm really surprised just having some sense of how much, how many volunteer groups are doing public lands cleanups. I'm really surprised that the number is this small. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's just a reflection that our rates are we've kept rates pretty low for people for a long time.
Yeah, and I will comment that those the numbers though, and the amount of material that's coming in through these cleanups has continued to increase pretty dramatically. So this report was as of the beginning of June. Currently, we're at about $5,661 for the year. That's about $600 higher than last year, about $2,500 higher than the year before. So the number of activities and the volume of material are increasing on an annual basis.
It's good. It's a good trend to track.
Yeah.
And we are not. And are we constrained at all in the amount of those waivers that we are able to offer?
Generally, we offer them up to $1,000. However, we've had a few events like China Hat this year in which they were bringing haul after haul, load after load. So we increased that one particularly up to 2,000. So it's a case by case. We try and limit it to no more than 1,000, but it really depends on the scale and scope.
Okay, is there a motion?
Yes, I move approval of a resolution number 2023-040.
Second.
Any other discussion? Thanks for putting this together. It's a great program for the community.
Yeah.
Seeing no other discussion, Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Thank
And
you.
if you have a credit left, you have 2 days to use it, or I guess you could say 2.5.
There's other resources on the way.
All right. Well, thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Oh, and welcome.
There we go. Item number 12, Core 3 Project Land Use Entitlement Applications. This is crew that was in the back of the room. So yeah, Core 3 project in Redmond area, getting closer to land use.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Bollinger, Deschutes County Property Management. We also have a few stakeholders and partners with us in person as online, and so I'll let them introduce themselves. Scott?
Good morning, Scott Aycock, Community Economic Development Director at COIC.
Morning, Mike Krantz, Chief of Police, City of Bend.
William Bailey, Patrol Captain, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office.
And then online.
Jeff, Fire Chief, Jefferson County Fire and EMS.
Thank you. So we're here today to ask the board for approval to authorize the Deschutes County Property Manager to sign land use entitlement applications and associated documents for the Core 3 project, which is formerly known as the Regional Emergency Services Training Coordination Operations Center, I believe, something to that effect.
Emergency
Yeah.
training and coordination.
Coordination Center. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott, and he's going to kind of take us through the process and what that would look like.
All right, good morning, Chair DeBonne and Commissioners. As you know, COIC is serving as a sort of neutral project manager on behalf of a host of local, state, and federal public safety agencies. So that's why I'm here today. A little really brief recap on how we got here. As you know, we've talked about this a number of times, so this is review. But these conversations have been going for, 15 or more years about the need for an opportunity for a combined shared regional emergency services and public safety training and coordination center. Those conversations eventually yielded a feasibility study, viability study that was done by University of Oregon that determined, this was back in, I'm going to say 2019, that determined that the region really needed a facility like this and could sustain it. And around that time, the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, Bend PD and Fire, Redmond Fire, and the Tri-County Emergency Managers and others requested that COIC step into sort of a neutral convening and project management role. And we took it on at that time, and our first big task was to prepare a more detailed strategic business plan that really outlined the priority services that were needed and focused in on the subject property, which is a Deschutes County owned piece of land. And at the time, I think we were estimating maybe 200 acres or so were needed for the facility. That grew as we went through workshops to finalize the slate of facilities, props, and everything that was going to be needed on the site to the 300 acres that last February, I believe, not this most recent, but the one before, that the Board of County Commissioners agreed to reserve 300 acres of that same property for this use. Just as a note, this is potentially a multi-phase build out, but we're really focused just on phase 1 right now, which is an emergency coordination center building with associated admin and classroom space, a fire training tower and burn building, an emergency vehicle operators course, and a driving skills pad. And then there's space for all kinds of other facilities and props, shooting ranges, multi-purpose scenario village, et cetera. So the pace really picked up last year with the MOU that about 27 local, state, and federal public safety agencies signed, including Deschutes County, that's in support of the facility, and just agreed that we're working on this together. In that MOU also memorialized the county's reserving 300 acres for this purpose. We also last year received $9.5 million from the state legislature in support of the project, as well as $500,000 from Oregon State Fire Marshal's office. As you know, the property is outside the UGB. And so in addition to zone changes and site plans and all that kind of stuff, we've got to go through a land use entitlement process to bring it into the UGB. And so we procured a firm called Sarah Architects. They're out of Portland, architectural engineering firm, and then they in turn have a host of subcontractors, and they did a workshop, finalized kind of a rough master plan, and approximately a year later, we're here today with draft out. Well, they'll be final. I'm getting them later today. All the applications, I believe it's 8, maybe 9 total land use applications, both to the city of Redmond and to Deschutes County for all the different pieces of the puzzle. They're detailed in the attachments: zone changes, comp plan updates, UGB amendment, annexation, and the partitions as well to partition the land from the parent property. We also last year met individually with each of you to discuss that we would be needing to partition the property in prep to convey that parcel over to COIC. Now, COIC is, like I said, neutral project manager. We will then be, once the facility is operational, fully built, the plan The group that oversees this, those 27 agencies, they've created something called an executive council. And so that group's plan is to create a purpose-built ORS 190 intergovernmental agency to govern the facility. So COIC, once everything is built and done, will be transferring everything over to that new entity to govern and operate the facility. So one error, the attachments incorrectly state that we'd be applying to the city for the land partition, but because the parent property is in both the city and the county, we have to apply to both. So our goal is that all these applications will be going in on Friday of this week in order to, in part, get ahead of a fee increase that's effective July 1. But they're ready to go. And so the request is to authorize Christy here on your behalf to sign those applications. We would be signing as the applicant, but we obviously need the landowner to also co-sign all those applications. And I want to just pause to see if there are any additional comments from our leaders, Chief Blake online, Chief Krantz, or Captain Bailey here.
I'll just say really quickly that this has been a long-term project. We thank the commissioners for their continued support, of this project and recognition of the real critical nature of this overall project for our growing community in the Tri-County area, as well as the region around us, around public safety and the needs of this community as we grow. So we appreciate the continued support and we look forward to this project moving forward.
I would just want to thank you for your time today. I also want to ask for your support of this. The Sheriff's Office supports the Core 3 project, the current vision, and an unrealized vision of what's possible at the Core 3, whether it be the multidisciplinary training, the emergency response center. Should a regional or statewide emergency happen, it's often said that Deschutes County will become the hub, and this facility will help support that in the future. And I appreciate your time.
Great.
Scott, I have a question. Or is there somebody online? Oh, Jeff.
Oh,
Sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to say again, I appreciate your support. I worked in Bend for 28.5 years, and the cooperation between everybody has been great. And I think what's great about this program, the Core 3, is it's the cooperation between the 3 counties, and especially Jefferson County. And I speak for all of Jefferson County, as we're 100% behind this project. Being from a smaller rural agency now, we rely on some of the bigger departments to help us with some training, to help us with some facility stuff. And this is a great piece for us to actually train our firefighters and our police officers cooperatively together. So, and then not to mention all the emergency coordination pieces to that. So I just really appreciate your support. And I just want the Deschutes County Commission to know that Jefferson County, especially Jefferson County Fire and EMS, is 100% behind this project.
Great. Commissioner Dare.
And I think we should mention Crook County because they're really close to it because it's right close to the county line. So
yeah, and I should just note on that, Prineville Police Department has indicated they're joining the group as well. We haven't heard from the sheriff or fire chief, but the police department is joining.
okay, so Prineville is okay. Good,
Yeah.
good. No, Scott, I was just wondering. I know you just said that you have like $10 million worth of funding. Did you get any funding this year through the
The
legislature?
legislature? No, and when we were stunned, we
Yeah, I was just wondering.
I honestly, we're still trying to shuffle through things to figure out what happened there, because we did request $5.5 million more
So it went
dollars.
to maybe North Point or something? It went to that Redmond project, the 485.
Yeah, I know Redmond did get a number of projects, but honestly, our legislators and our lobbyists were just really stunned. Because we all, as being the House Minority Leader's #1 priority, we thought we'd have a decent chance of getting funding. I will say things were kind of crazy there at the end of the session. We also know there's likely to be an e-board session called, perhaps maybe even a special session. We don't know. So we haven't given up on that because, as everyone knows, there's an enormous surplus in the budget from their last revenue forecast. So we're just galvanizing around it and bringing folks together to not give up, and B, start working more comprehensively with, because we've been working with about 8 individual state agencies. We're talking now about convening them all together to come up with what is the state's interest in this and how are they going to support it. So that's our next steps as a result of that. But we haven't quite given up because we think there's at least a chance.
Oh, no, I'd never give up.
Yeah.
And you
never
do have
give up.
the e-board coming up. And so, yes,
Yeah, we were very surprised.
I was surprised too. But 5 million did go to, that North Point project. And Crook County was asking for 15 million for their public safety building, et cetera, and they didn't get it. So, yeah, just we count our blessings.
So this is a mature package, taking a year to get it all together, big picture. I'm on the leadership board of this operation also, so I'm in the board meetings and following all the topics. It's an exciting moment to be able to put the land use together for this. There is some money in the bank, so it's not going to stop us. There isn't current other investments at this point in time, but it is time to really get the phase 1 package together, figure out what we can build, when we can build it. But we need to get through this land use first. Is there a motion?
I guess one other question I have is, so there was some significant discussion about getting efficiencies with getting the infrastructure across the street, from south to north, to serve both the Oasis Village project and Core 3. And can you give us a little bit of
Sure,
insight on why that didn't, why we're not realizing those efficiencies?
Yeah, I that's really more of a question to City of Redmond engineering and leadership, but basically my understanding is that it wasn't going to make sense for the Oasis Village and associated projects to bring those over where we needed them to come over. So we're looking at bringing those over at what will be 21st Street, which is farther east of where they wanted to bring them over. So I think it really comes down to cost. What we are going to be sharing is the transportation access. So ultimately, short term, the plan for Oasis Village is an existing access, but that's just short term. Long term would be to use that both projects and really anything that happens in the future in that area would utilize 21st Street. So we are partnering on that, on the cost of that as well, but not the water and sewer.
Thank you.
So yeah, I was in that same spot just a couple months ago. I'm like, we are going to do what? We're going to do it twice. And it sounds like it's inefficient, but water and sewer across to Oasis Village is different than water and sewer across to Core 3 through the property up 21st. And they're going to make a loop, which will be a major infrastructure backbone for that east side. So it's kind of 2 different projects. And if we did the Core 3 one and then brought it back to Oasis, it's like a quarter mile of utilities where just across the road, it's a lot shorter. So there's reasons, engineering and cost reasons.
Yeah, and there's even just simply that we need a bigger pipe than they do.
Yep.
For the water.
And it's going to go to and through the property. It's not because Oasis is just determination. This is a big infrastructure piece.
Yep. And there's another factor, which is I believe the sewer line already goes a lot farther east, so we don't have to pay for that. Like that's already there, so we might as well tee into it where it is and cross versus paying for additional sewer line across the highway to travel east, if that makes sense.
The good part is, City of Redmond is our partner on this. I mean, they've used their engineering staff and consulting engineering for Oasis Village, and everybody's working together on this. So it's not disconnected. It's very connected. So
I'll move approval of board order number 2023-027, authorizing the Deschutes County property manager to sign land use entitlement applications and associated documents for the Core 3 project.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
Thank
So the request is to make sure these get signed, hopefully today, just because the time's going to be clicking away real fast at the end of the week.
Oh, I just want to say our property is valued at $16,300,000 from Deschutes County. So we are doing our fair share.
On behalf of all the agencies, thank you again for that.
Okay, well, thank you for the appraisal, Christy.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Item number 13, contract for property cleanup.
Me again.
Hello.
I'm here today to request board signature for a contract with Central Oregon Biosolutions for property cleanup on an as-needed basis. So this contract would support the recently approved remediation plan for North Juniper Ridge. This would be a $250,000 contract. We're not sure how much of this contract we'll expend, but we are this would be for a 5-year term. And as mentioned recently, that we would come back with costs as we go through the process for to further refine the remediation plan for North Juniper Ridge.
Great. So this is basically just having some capacity, somebody on call to be able to respond and be a partner with us to proceed.
Yes.
Have they actually looked at the property then?
Yes, I went out there with the owner. His name is Eric, and went out there with the sheriff's office probably about 6 weeks ago. And we were toured the site together. So he's very aware and very used to, he does a lot of work with the city of Bend. I believe he might be on contract now with the city of Redmond. And so this would just be another contract for him. So he's very much used to doing this type of work.
Okay. How long does he have an approximation of how many weeks it's going to take him to get it cleaned up?
We haven't dove into the finite details of the timeline, but we put him on notice yesterday that we were coming today to ask the board to approve this contract. So we expect to meet with him at the end of this week or early next week, depending on the holiday, to start working on that timeline and what that would look like. So I don't have an answer for you today, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or is there a motion?
I move approval of board signature of document number 2023-372, a contract with Central Oregon Biosolutions for property cleanups on an as-needed basis.
I'll second.
So one question, is there any solicitation for other services or other companies bidding, or is this sole source, or what's the concept there?
So we looked at the city of Bend's current contract, and they had cooperative language, which allows another agency to, in essence, piggyback that contract.
Okay, so they already went through
therefore,
this.
yeah, therefore we could do a direct contract versus a request for proposal process.
Okay, so it happened previously through the city.
Yes.
And cooperative. Okay, thank you very much. Any other?
The only other thing I'd say about this is, we are working on the tail end of an issue here. We're cleaning up a site where certain kinds of upstream preventative work could conceivably have prevented some of the issues that we now need to clean up. It's very likely if we move people out of North Juniper Ridge or other locations, and there are not, established, managed, authorized, supported places for people to go to take steps out of homelessness, that we'll be doing this again. We will continue to have to pay on the tail end of this process to clean up sites. So I just want to point that out as an argument to think about in making investments on the upstream end instead of paying for cleanups over and over and over again.
We're going to be talking about the response letter from the governor's office for our ask for land use too. So thank you for those comments, and we'll be talking about that here in a few moments. Any other discussion?
I did want to say thank you to the other two commissioners. We actually funded $300,000 for 7 additional cabins at Veterans Village. They currently have had 13 veterans that were homeless that have moved on to housing, and they're thinking a couple more almost on the verge of moving on. So I'm so proud of what we can do to help with the Veterans Village program. It is successful, and they're doing exactly what, COVA's leadership with Dave, who's at the facility, amazing. So thank you to their program, and thank you to Eric Tobiason's leadership.
Okay, calling for the vote. Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
Commissioner Dare.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christy.
Item number 11, deliberations on Griffin Renfro Plan Amendment and Zone Change. Oh, sure. Nice large format.
You mean something I can read? Thank you. It's only 2 pages. I did notice that.
For the record. Just as long as you have an extra.
It's in our packet. It's just small.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Rachel Vickers. I'm an associate planner with the Community Development Department. Today, we'll be having deliberations for a plan amendment and zone change. The applicant has requested to change a 40-acre parcel about 1 mile east of the city of Bend from EFU to MUA 10 and a co-current plan amendment from agricultural to rural residential exception area. The matrix does not cover every single applicable approval criteria. Instead, this highlights and provides a review of those issue areas that received the most comments or were most important for the board to review. If commissioners have any initial questions, we can go into those first. Otherwise, I'll jump into the matrix. We've got 4 points to go over.
Any questions?
No.
Oh,
One thing I should disclose, share with everyone is it's at the last session that we had focused on this application. I was very interested in the water, the potential for moving around water rights and water infrastructure. That was brought up by the applicants. And I did have an in-depth discussion with Arnold Irrigation District about kind of how much of that is happening, how it works. So I'm coming with a little bit more information about that, which since it wasn't really part of the record, I will not be part of my decision process for this application, but just so everyone knows that I gathered a little bit more information about that.
Okay, thank you. So let's start. Yep.
all right. And let me know if you want any more or less information as I'm going through these. So the first topic of discussion is, does the subject property constitute agricultural land as defined in the OAR? The hearings officer found that the subject property did not constitute agricultural land as defined in the OAR. Oppositional comments assert that there's other agricultural uses that could be used on the subject property. However, the applicant asserts that the soils are unproductive and it's not feasible to obtain a profit in money due to the existing land use patterns and high cost of required inputs. Staff agrees with the hearings officer's findings, and especially in light of the soil study that showed that the subject property consisted of 58.5% class 7 and 8 soils. So the board determination is, does the subject property constitute agricultural land under OAR 660-033-00201A? If no, the board can continue reviewing the applications and move approval to the plan amendment zone change. And if yes, the board must deny the plan amendment and zone change.
So as a starting point, I support the hearings officer conclusion. So the property is not agricultural land under the statewide planning goals.
I guess I would say that my concern about this particular issue area is that there is a portion of this property that is better soil. The property has irrigation rights, and there are agricultural land uses going on immediately adjacent to the property. That said, given the location of the property in in the Arnold Irrigation District system. At the end of the farthest out lateral, and the unreliability of water to that property, and the apparent, based on the letters that were provided, the apparent lack of interest by the adjacent landowners in leasing land for to extend their agricultural purposes or for things like that. I guess I'm comfortable with the hearings officer's findings. I just wanted to establish that it's not a really clean, simple question, a clean, simple answer in relation to this property.
I can understand that statement because it's only 58.5% is class 7 and 8. And then reading the Sisters Nugget this morning early, hay prices in Central Oregon are the highest. I mean, you can get your hay for a lot less money in Washington State, Idaho, et cetera. So hay is actually quite a commodity here, but yeah, they're at the end of Arnold. So it would make sense to agree with the hearings officer.
So that's no on all three of us.
Yes.
Perfect. Moving on to the next point. So the discussion topic is whether the applicant's soil study that the applicant provided is sufficient to demonstrate that the subject property consists of predominantly class 7 and 8 soils. The hearings officer found that the applicant's soil study did show that the subject property was predominantly class 7 and 8 soils. Oppositional comments assert that NCRS data is more accurate and should be relied upon. However, the applicant asserts that a site-specific soil study by a licensed soil certifier is more accurate. Staff agrees with the applicant and the hearings officer that a site-specific soil study is more accurate. And so the board determination point is, does the site-specific soil study show the property is predominantly class 7 and 8 soils? If yes, the board can continue reviewing the applications and move to approve the plan amendment zone change. If no, the board may deny the application because the property does not meet the definition of Goal 3 agricultural land.
I would say yes, it does.
This question gets asked on a regular basis, and I'm comfortable with the idea that a site-specific soil study provides a more accurate, detailed understanding of a given site than the NRCS data.
And I do too. So we're all on the same page there also.
Right, perfect. Flipping over the decision matrix, the third point is, has there been a change in circumstances since the property was originally zoned? The hearings officer found that the applicant's proposal is compliant with DCC 18.136.020D, being as that there has been a change in circumstances since the property was last zoned, including but not limited to the new soil data that was provided. Oppositional comments assert that the soils and agricultural productivity of the property have not changed. However, the applicant asserts that there has been a change in circumstances, including but not limited to new soil data, changes in economics and farming, and the city of Bend's boundaries have gotten closer. Staff agrees with the hearings officer's findings based on the submitted soil study analysis. So the board determination point, has there been a change in circumstances since the property was zoned? If yes, the board can continue reviewing the applications and move to approve the plan amendment zone change. If no, the board may deny the application for failure to comply with DCC 18.136.020D.
So this one is a little bit more vague, as in farming for a profit has never been a history of this property. So I would say we're in that same spot. But I mean, the logic of concluding that more information about the soil study is a path that I can support. As I say, farming for a profit is a bigger picture item, though.
I would say yes, I can agree with the hearings officer.
I see both sides of this issue. But I would, I'm comfortable with the hearings officer's perspective on this.
Okay.
So all three vote yes on that. Perfect. And then moving to the last point, does the application require an exception to statewide planning goal 14, which relates to urbanization? The hearings officer found that goal 14 does not apply to the subject application because the applicant's proposal does not involve property within an urban growth boundary, and it does not involve the urbanization of rural land. Opposition comments assert that converting EFU property to MUA 10 in this area is ineffective and unsuitable, and comments raise concerns about the type and density of development that will occur on the subject property. The applicant asserts that these properties are eligible for future expansion of Bend's urban growth boundary, and conversion would promote an efficient extension of urban services and facilitate future urban development. And the applicant also asserts that goal 14 is not applicable because the proposal does not involve property within an urban growth boundary and does not involve the urbanization of rural land. Staff agrees with the hearings officer findings that the subject property does not, and also wants to note that the plan amendment zone change does not approve any development at this time, just the zone change. Future uses may require separate land use applications. So the board determination point for this is, does goal 14 apply to the subject application? If no, the board can continue reviewing the applications and move to approve the plan amendment zone change. If yes, the board will need to determine whether goal 14 has been satisfied. If goal 14 applies, the board finds it has been satisfied by the applicant, they may adopt alternate findings and approve the application. If goal 14 applies and the board finds it has not been satisfied, the board may deny the application because a goal exception is required.
These two statements of applicant's position are in some ways like in tension with each other. You're talking about a scenario where someday this is going to be in the potentially could be in the urban growth boundary, and then the other position says but it's not in the urban growth boundary, so don't think about us that way. So this is a very complex location because it's because it's proximity to city limits and the urban growth boundary, but it's not immediately adjacent like many other comp plan amendment and rezone applications that we have seen. I do, as I try to think about it, I'm trying to picture I'm also trying to picture where the future urban growth boundary of the city of Bend is going to be, how far out it will come. And we've had a chance to look at that in great detail through recent comp plan amendment and rezone applications that are closer into the urban growth boundary. And I do feel that the future urban growth boundary will be farther out. It may not be this far out. But it's reasonable to me that we would have a certain amount of for lack of a better word, feathering from urban, very fully urban development to something like multiple use agriculture to EFU, and real large property agricultural activity, and this parcel sits sort of in the zone where I picture that, it may very well be appropriate to have multiple use agriculture and rural residential 10 zone properties in the future. So I guess that's a no.
And I support that also. So goal 14 does not apply to the subject application.
Yes, and reading the hearing officer notes in our packet, yes, I would say no also.
Okay. Perfect. That concludes staff's deliberation matrix. Did the board want to make a move or continue deliberation?
This is deliberations on this topic with the help of this matrix. At this time, we can vote to take a position on this, and then the final written decision will follow.
Mhm.
Is there a motion to approve this application for rezone,
Um,
plan amendment, and rezone?
yes,
I can make the motion. The board move approval of plan amendment and zone change for file numbers 247-22-000792-PA and 247-22-00793-ZC. That seem right?
Sure.
Right.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion?
No.
Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Here we go. So as I say, written decision to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
So that is the end of our published agenda items today. Do we have executive session?
We do. Okay, labor. We also have a couple of other items, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So just making sure. So, yeah, we'll get through other items and then we'll see where we're at. Go ahead, Nick, if.
Great, thank you. And I'm not sure if Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator, will join me or not. Either way is fine. We received the letter from Governor Kotek's office regarding Juniper Ridge that Sherry, you mentioned just a few moments ago. I do have a copy of it here if you'd like if you'd like to have a copy before you. And the question, and here comes Eric now as we're on this item, which is perfect. The question before you is whether the board is interested in responding to this letter. Of course, staff would take the first opportunity to draft that or not.
Yeah. Commissioner Chang, have you seen this letter?
I have.
And Commissioner Dare?
It's highlighted.
Okay, so we've all reviewed it. I want to thank the governor and the governor's office for responding. This was a very specific ask we sent, asking for authority for some kind of siting and land use at the perimeter of the cities, right? That's our starting point, what we asked for. Now we get a letter responding saying it gave us a list of activities, things to check for and take responsibility for as a board of commissioners, the way it's written. So as I say, I see this as a little bit of a disconnect from, we're trying to add to the capacity of a place for people. And now we've been given a checklist of things we got to go answer for. So that's the way I read it.
I don't read it that way at all. I see it as us having made a requests and the governor's office asking for essentially trying to assess the probability of success of the proposed projects before they come a step further to try to meet us where we want them to be.
Well, yeah, so this is a letter to us and we'll have thoughts and opinions on it. As I say, guidance today would be, are we going to try to digest it and respond to it? Or would the coordinated homeless office be a place for this to, take it up and look at the big picture? Or do we ask them to give us the content for response? There's just different ways we can go with this.
Well, there's different places where we need to look for the information for each of these information requests. The alignment with the multi-agency coordinating group. We should ask for the multi-agency coordinating group's help with assembling, putting together a response for that. Existing shelter capacity. There are various entities that would have that information. There's, for plans for operating an alternative shelter site, if we are talking specifically about the Gales property, then we would want to talk with the Gales brothers and they're most likely partners in developing and operating a site, plus identify what we are willing to do to support that work, to answer question 4. So there's a lot of different places we need to look for this information.
I'm going out to the Gales property tomorrow. I'd been hoping to go yesterday, but Craig wasn't back in town yet. So I am going to go out there tomorrow. I know originally we were told that the MAC money, there is no camping, no tents, and yet we have people on this side of the mountain that they want to be with their things, and they don't want to go to the Bethlehem Inn. They don't want to go where there's rules, and yet we are responsible for doing the best that we can do to help with the situation. So I would say it's going to be very complicated. I don't know the capacity of the Gales property. I don't know how many people can possibly be there, but I know that Chuck Hemingway is really, really excited about it, and the potential is great. And then again, it seems like we're going to have something that fits this group of people that don't want to go to, let's say, the navigation center because they can't take their things, they can't take their pets. There's a lot of children out there. She asked about the fact that we didn't do the La Schwab lot. Well, there's already probably 100 to 200 people out at China Hat already in that south end of town. So what is it we can do to give people the services? Maybe they don't want them. They want their animals, their pets. They want them near, and they want their property. So, what is it we can do? We have situations, we've got the Juniper situation, which I'm really glad we're going to start cleaning that up. And if we can bring in, the other essential things to give those people the services that they need so that we at least can address public safety sooner rather than later. But tenting and things, I don't think the governor was really happy about it. And I really feel like, gosh, we have tremendous amount of numbers of people that actually are living outside city limits. And I don't believe they want to move inside the city limits.
I think that's kind of responding to two of the items here. On the first information request, alignment with multi-agency coordinating group. We are not talking about something that the multi-agency coordinating group funding is an eligible use of. So in that case, I think the governor isn't asking, is this multi-agency coordinating group stuff? They're asking about, the word used here is alignment. I would say we should think about that as complementarity. The homeless service provider community in our region understands very well that you need a variety of shelter types and transitional housing to serve a whole bunch of different populations, subpopulations of homeless. So we can answer this question is, how is this request part of or complementary to the work that's happening within our MAC? Certainly people who are part of that multi-agency coordinating group are acutely aware of the narrow scope of the MAC funds and what the other needs in the community are. So I do think that they would be very helpful in helping us answer that question. In relation to the urban growth boundary, issue, we can talk about specifically about that South Murphy site, but we can also, I think the governor is asking, why can't you provide outdoor shelter, safe parking, managed camps within the urban growth boundary as well as outside the urban growth boundary? And that is a pretty legitimate question to ask in my mind. because as we know, there are a lot of people who are living unsheltered within the urban growth boundary right now. And if we're talking about setting something up at a place like the Gales property to move them out of the city, that's that's a concern to me, because I think it's in significant part a city's responsibility to provide the places for people to live. That's the way that the Oregon land use planning system is set up. The majority of Oregonians are going to live in incorporated cities.
I believe RVs were not allowed in the MAC funding. Eric, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that
Okay.
what we're talking about are not eligible uses. So
Exactly.
instead of saying, we're not just saying, oh no, the MAC funding doesn't cover what we're talking about. We're talking about the complementarity of something like outdoor shelter at the Gales property.
Okay,
MAC
well,
funding covers this. The other needs in our community are this, and that's how it's complementary to or in alignment with what the MAC is working on.
well, the question number 3, options within the UGB. I think we should really go into great detail with what the safe parking programs are doing. I know Rick Russell in Redmond has increased their capacity tremendously. And I know that in Bend, it's one of their most successful programs, where people are moving on. So those are options that, don't fit the MAC model, but they're doing a really, really good job. So if we could,
So take this to a higher level.
right.
I would propose that this goes to the coordinated homeless office for a response. Deschutes County's willing to cite something in support of a place for people. And now we're being asked to answer for all the efforts here. And we already have a group that does this. I mean,
Okay.
and we don't have a director for it right now, which is the bad part, but
No,
let's not muddy the waters again by having different people doing different responses.
okay. That's probably that's a good idea. We can, this could be sent to that group, and we could definitely come up with a list of all the things that, do understand this. It's just like the 750,000, she's asking, have we gone with ongoing operations? The 750,000 that we dedicated, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, finally did just get implemented in spending in the city of Bend.
Yeah,
So
so-
that's definitely something that we have done.
There's lots of common information here. We can
Yeah.
all start listing things off. Some of these are efforts by the city of Bend. Some of them are efforts by the coordinated homeless office, other nonprofits. So as I say, we're still in that same spot. We've been here for so long. We have people come to us, and now we have the governor asking us, but we have this coordinated homeless office who's taken the lead on this. So we can take the lead, but then we're just splitting the
Okay, well,
leadership again.
Well, I think it's appropriate for the coordinated homeless response office to be involved in this and helping us develop this opportunity. This is clearly of interest to both the city of Bend and Deschutes County when we're talking about the Gales property. If we're talking about asking the governor for authority within a mile of a UGB, then it's also of interest to the cities of La Pine, Sisters, and Redmond as well.
and we do have that 45 acres outside of Oasis Village that we had, I believe, talked about maybe utilizing. And I believe it is in the city of Redmond's UGB. So definitely we need to get back to the governor's office as quickly as we can.
Well, and the next coordinated homeless office meeting is in July 20th.
Right, I know, but you know what, we can start putting all these, we can put this all together.
Maybe that's a simple ask, is it? Because, you have
Yeah.
information, I have information, we have
Right.
thoughts. But I mean, if we
If we
as
put
a
it all,
board, the Board of Commissioners says, in partnership with our coordinated homeless office, please take this and provide the content you can in response. And
Yes.
then we'll figure out where.
yeah, put it all, and then we'll put it all together and see if there's some other things. I know like the J-Bar-J, I just ran into them the other day. They have the funding through the state and through the MAC to do 15 beds in Redmond for teenage, and that has to be done by next January. So that's going to be capacity there for youth. The veterans, Oasis Village. Yeah, they've probably got a building already picked out, I believe.
Well, in the ideal world, the advisory committee, or, that function, essentially the connection to the homeless service provider community would be, all set up and running strong at the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. And they, that would be a great opportunity to collect that information, which I think probably lives in the collective brain over at the Homeless Leadership Coalition. But my big concern right now, I agree that this is an appropriate function. Assembling this information is an appropriate function for the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. I am just concerned about whether they actually have the capacity right now, the staff capacity to do this. And if they don't have the staff capacity, then we can say it's being done under the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, but it will be various city and county staff who are doing the work to put this information together anyway. So,
Chris doesn't happen to be on, does he today? Chris?
No, I mean, I could respond if the request is for the coordinated office staff to draft a response, we will do that. I mean, the interim leadership is really, we're polling from different city, county staff and Chris, but if the request from this board is for staff to draft a response, we can do that. But I'm a little bit unclear on if that's the request or if it was to send it to the coordinated office board of directors for a response. But either way, we can make it happen. I would just like clarification on which direction.
Well, I mean, before we assign work to the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, do we have to ask the office's board of director, the governing board? Like we're talking about essentially making a unilateral decision that one of the 5 governing board members of the Coordinated Homeless Response Office would direct the office to do something.
Well, no, but I mean, we're a board asking for the office to do something. So then it's the business-like response. So if she, as a board member right now, she wouldn't have the authority to say yes, is what you're saying. That's right. But we're just sending the request.
Yeah. You can always ask, right?
So in answer to Eric's question, we are requesting of the governing board of the Coordinated Homeless Response Office that the office take on this task.
So just to clarify, in theory, they don't have staff. I mean, they've got 0.5 staff, Chris, who's fully over allocated, I think, with all the subcommittees and preparing for the next meeting. What we can do is we can draft responses for this, circulated among our board, Chris and others, and then we can take it to the Coordinated Homeless Office Response Office board meeting on July 20th and say, do you endorse sending this letter on either on your behalf or something of that nature? Because I'm just trying to figure out the logistics of how we actually assemble the information, present it absent staff, and then forward it to the governor. Is that helpful, Eric? Or
Yeah, I think that clarity would be helpful.
And you know what? I did have lunch with Taylor Smiley Wolf. I think she's going to have a baby at the end of July. But I could, just see if she had any insight to, saying, Taylor, we really have this tremendous need on this side of the mountain. We have people that don't want to lose their animals, their possessions. There's a lot of children that are out there. What is it, what we really need help from the governor's office without waiting for another month. It's another 3 weeks before we can come together.
Taylor Smiley Wolf, conveyed to me, I had a chance to catch her when she was meeting with Representative Levy about this, and sit on their discussion for a little bit. And she conveyed that they would be asking about these things to me at that time. So I'm pretty sure that she was likely the person who wrote this letter. So I mean, if we need clarifications, that's great. And you could if you want to talk to her again, I mean, you could convey to her that we're going to try to put together responses, but I'm quite confident she's aware of what's in this, what is in this letter right now.
So a little bit of content then. It says options within the UGB.
Right.
So this is from the governor's office to a board of commissioners at Deschutes County, talking about the UGB. Are they referring to the city of Bend? I don't take responsibility for the land use decisions inside the city of Bend. The coordinated homeless office may take the bigger picture here. We're talking about land outside of the city. So it's just even a defocused response, which is a shame that we're in this situation.
Well,
Everybody's got thoughts and opinions, but man, this isn't very businesslike.
we led this request, but the city of Bend piled on. I mean, they've been supporting our requests moving forward. So if this is directed to both us and the city of Bend, then that makes a whole lot of sense to me. I do think,
But it's not. It's to Chair DeBone, Commissioners of Darren Chang.
Well, and you can't ignore Redmond and the number of people that are in Redmond. So it's really, it's inside the UGB of Bend and Redmond.
Well, when I said I think it's appropriate for the Coordinated Homeless Response Office to be involved because this is of interest to both, the cities and the county, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Do
So
you have clarity on that?
no,
I'd like to restate it to see if I do.
let's see if you have clarity.
So there'll be a draft response from staff from the coordinated office / the county. That draft response will go to the coordinated office board of directors for their input. And then that comes back to this board.
Right. And if we can get that letter done sooner rather than later, that we could all actually give our input with email perhaps. And then we could maybe have a final, something by the 20th. Just trying to save some time.
Well, and a letter
do
back from the Board of Commissioners would be, we're asking for land use authority outside of UGB.
Right.
Here's the response from our coordinated homeless office. It's like we could set our table a little bit by responding in a business-like fashion, the entity of the board, the entity of the city council, and the entity of the board, the coordinated homeless office. Because to say this is kind of mixes it up the way that it was we were responded from the governor's office. To be determined. I'm just throwing out ideas as we're talking.
There's just, we have a lot more than 161 households to rehouse, and we need more than 111 shelter beds. And yet the people that we're really worried about don't want to be in those shelter beds.
A percentage of them.
Yeah.
Again, I think we need to, in answering this question about the alignment with the multi-agency coordinating group, I think we're talking about complementarity. What we're interested in is complementary to what was funded through the governor's executive order, and just kind of laying out the bigger picture of all of the needs in our region.
And just to put it on the record, the MAC group in Lane County hasn't awarded as of last Friday. They have not announced their awards yet. So at least we're ahead of that.
Okay, so the steps I have is staff will draft a letter. We'll send it to the coordinated office board for input before the coordinated office board meeting on July 20th. Staff will get input from the coordinated office board members ahead of time and bring it to the July 20th coordinated office board meeting. And then that input will come back to this board.
So probably step one, please share this with the board, the 5-person coordinated homeless office.
Yep, we can do that.
And we actually, in our bylaws, were asking that someone from the Homeless Leadership Coalition be a liaison on that board. Not a voting member, but a liaison. So we have not voted on those bylaws yet, but that's good though. Then we have more eyes looking at the what the letter is asking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
I
discussion.
mean, I would actually CC beyond, like if the Bend City Council hasn't received a copy of this, I would CC, you know, beyond just the city councilor who sits on the governing board. Same for the, yeah, really all the cities, I think, maybe making them aware.
Okay, we could probably go through the city managers to ask that it get distributed to all the city councilors of the 4 cities.
Fine with me. Okay,
The second question we have is regarding the Department of State lands, land transfer. I don't know if you want to
Sure.
frame that question.
Last week when we discussed the Juniper Ridge remediation plan, the staff report mentioned, and I also mentioned it verbally, that moving forward on Juniper Ridge is the same staff that is working on the DSL land exchange. And that moving forward with Juniper Ridge means that the DSL will need to be postponed. So I just want to talk to the board about that, and also talk about getting some written communication to the Redmond City Council, the Fair Board, and the service providers in Redmond. So staff can draft a letter, copy the board, or we can take it or open to other ideas.
so yeah, I mean, it's been a priority to do that land swap for many years. Department of State Lands took a pretty clear position saying we need to remove dispersed campers and clean up the property. DSL's position was, well, we don't have this problem because we just aggressively keep people off of our property. So we're on the receiving end of that. So it's very frustrating. And I want to be a partner with the city of Redmond. City of Redmond's, you know, a couple of their side streets in the industrial area have folks on them. And then this is right over the kind of the rise off of 17th Street is what we're talking about. So it's a real shame that we're talking about doing this. Yeah. I don't know that we have any other options. I'm just laying out the big picture, what I'm seeing.
I know in the neighborhood of Medline, which is quite a successful company, and they're right there.
Yeah, I mean, we could be losing some big corporate.
I know, yes.
I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
So
Steve is very concerned. Yeah.
So is this for a decision or for just acknowledgement by the board that this is where?
this is what we need to do at this moment in time.
Staff recommends that there be some written communication to those entities, and that could either come, staff could draft something from the board on behalf of the board, or just copy the board. The mechanism is probably less important.
EDCO,
than
you know,
the
the Ready Board, Redmond Economic Development, they were hesitant to take a position, and they did about a year and a half ago, saying, we need something done here because this is not good for economic development.
Right.
So, I mean, they should be part of this, the board.
Yeah,
current board should
the
be
Ready
part of
Board
this
can also
also.
be copied.
So, yeah, I support sending that letter out, acknowledging that, you know, we're priority wise, we're doing this before that.
I'm happy to draft it, and then I could just copy the board unless the board would like it to come back. I mean, I think it's a pretty.
From the board or from you on behalf of the board?
I'm offering to do it from me on behalf of the board, unless the board would like it to come from.
Yeah, I mean, from you is fine, just to get it out the door.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I'm happy to sign the letter directly and send it, but I mean, it can go either way. You know, I'll return to the thought that clearing activities in the absence of in the absence of programs and investments to create pathways out of homelessness for people are just shuffling the problem around. And, you know, we can sweep people out of there. And then if there are not good alternatives for people there, we will be fighting to keep them from coming back. So, you know, just want to re-emphasize the need to work at the other levels of the problem.
Eric, I'm happy with you drafting that letter and you're talking about the Ready Board, the City of Redmond, and the Fair Board, correct?
Yes, and the Redmond service providers.
Okay, Redmond Service Provider, okay.
Yeah, so go ahead and do that, and, you know, CC us and we'll
Okay.
share the information too.
The other thing is just in discussions with the city of Redmond, there is with the Shepherd's House coming online in a couple of months and Oasis Village. And then also the Redmond was talking about, I can't remember if it's 17th Street or 19th Street coming down. I mean, spring might be a better time, I guess is the point in terms of the DSL, getting the DSL land ready. Next spring might be a better time because of the additional services that are coming online in Redmond and other projects. All right, thank
Do you
you.
want to mention that in the letter or not? The fact, setting a proposed optimal time for action.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to add those, and I could double check with the city of Redmond to make sure.
Oasis Village, I mean, they're talking about making it happen here by the.
Right, they're targeting January. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else, Nick? Nothing else. Couple
Oh, I
of
did-
items.
Chris, Chris is going to go with me tomorrow to the Gales property. So I just heard from him.
Oh, good.
So great. So I could chat with him.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No.
Okay, and I don't think I have anything prepared, so we'll just, so this is the Wednesday before the end of the month, end of the fiscal year, 4th of July is next. And we do have executive session? Or not?
Can we have a 2-minute break? Or
Yeah,
do we have
yeah.
an executive session?
Are we doing executive session now or
We
after
can come back
lunch?
to one.
Oh,
Yeah, so we'll reconvene upstairs at 1 o'clock for executive. That'd be fine with me.
okay. 1
Morning.
o'clock.
Yep.
I think we'll have two.
Okay, 2 executive sessions. So this will, conclude our regular board meeting and we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock for executive sessions upstairs.
Oh, great.